Alrighty, welcome everyone. Welcome to another episode of the TED Talk. We have a returning guest to the show. We have a returning guest for probably the 20th time at this point. I feel like I need to add you as a partner, like 30% shareholder ambassador of the TED Talk channel at this point, Duncan. But yeah, it's Thorin once again. We're here to discuss some of the latest news of Tier 1 Counter-Strike, some of the results that have been happening in the last couple of days, because there's been a couple of events that just ended. But yeah, Duncan, thank you for coming over. How are you feeling?
Not too bad. I actually do think, by the way, this last weekend
Okay.
really showed me who has like the old school CS vibe, because I feel like a lot of people actually just watched one event or the other. But for
Right.
me, it's like I was used to the era when you had, oftentimes, to be fair, it was more like a stratified difference between the two events. But I'm used to having
Okay.
multiple events when I actually personally like it. I actually say for
Yeah.
me, it's more like watching sports. You choose the matches you want and you switch channels, Maybe you watch like this thing now, but you don't sit and watch 5 matches in a row. So I actually thought that was kind of cool that I could sort of dip between the StarLadder matches and the FISSURE ones, depending on who was playing it. If it was that interesting a game, I thought it was kind of a cool vibe.
Yeah, it was kind of a cool vibe. It's kind of like I think a couple years ago when there was that weird period when some teams had to choose between one event or the other. Because now it feels like you're kind of choosing whether you should skip, let's say, a PGL or you should go to everything. But a couple years ago, it was like Astralis would go to that event, Liquid would go to that event. Are they
Yeah.
going to play the same thing? Are they going to play something different? So it had that cool old school vibe to it.
If people don't remember, the event that famously was one where Mouse had snacks right before they kicked him, the one
Right.
that
Yeah.
IEM New York over
Yeah.
Liquid. That what people forget is that event had loads of the best teams, but Astralis, who was the #1 team, actually went to like a blast for that one. It was like blast at Istanbul or something. So
Mm.
no, it's the same thing, mate. Yeah, you had like it wasn't just like the top 16 applied, because basically this year all we get is, even when they say like events are overlapping, they just mean it's really hard to get from one to the other. They're not
Yeah.
really overlapping, or they're just an online tournament and then the other one's a big LAN. This was actually like two comparable LANs, just one had
Mm.
slightly better teams. But like I say,
Yeah.
depending on which teams you were a fan of, you could like the obvious example is, yeah, I'm sure most people cared about FISSURE, but at the point in FISSURE where it's like NAVI versus NIP, which is the best game at the other one, I'm sure people tuned into that one too. If you're at home, why wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It was really interesting. We're actually going to start things off here. So how we're going to do things here, we're going to go through a lot of the main storylines, because as you pointed out, I think both events, even though obviously one is a little bit bigger when it comes down to the scale of having live audience and the prize pool, StarLadder returning for the first time in 6 years to Counter-Strike is quite a big thing, and there was a lot of interesting things happening. But as you said, there was interesting games in both those events, and there was interesting storylines, considering that the major is coming in, the cutoff is on the 7th of October, so there isn't a lot of time for a lot of the teams. So that's why I think StarLadder was a really interesting one, and that's why I want to start it off from there. Obviously, I was involved with the broadcast. I was on the analyst desk, so had the pleasure of I guess spending 16 hours for the first 2 days watching a lot of the games. But for me, that was kind of like a major qualifier, because it's the same TO as the major one. There's a lot of teams that were outside of the VRS zone, some of them now in that invitee list. But we're gonna kick it off with one topic that I know that you're gonna be really opinionated on, and that is going to be NIP. So NIP, for anyone that doesn't know, they started off the year really well in Cologne, right? Had that really good run through stage 1. Stage 2 wasn't phenomenal, but it was still a lot better than what we were used to. And then NIP went to a really weird limbo of being incredibly unsatisfactory to watch, right? Because suddenly they go at Cologne and the expectations get raised, and then you go into a couple online events. You go to a couple LAN events like DraculaN last month, which was a LAN that they were expected to win, that they couldn't win. So now you were looking at NAP struggling, but then they head into this one, and bar NAVI, they actually beat everyone, right? They lost both of their series to NAVI, lost in the grand final, but they still made a second place. And there was a lot of good things about this. How I want to start that conversation when it comes down to NIP is that I want to ask you what in your opinion was the reason that we did see that drop of form when it came down to NIP between Cologne and this one, because it felt like those were the two most important events, but everything in between was a little bit of a messy, I guess, story. So yeah, let's just start it off from there, and then we're gonna try and I guess dive deeper.
I mean, I do think people take for granted that I've always said this. I actually think the two people who changed Counter Strike forever are Nico and Carrigan. And the reason why is because in Nico's case, for a long time, it would have been impossible to ever make a team of players from his region that were vaguely competitive to how good he was. So he essentially established, well, long before people did international teams, that like star players can go to other squads. And in fact, if you are one of those players, Guardian, Nico, you're gonna have to go to another team. And then, so he for me, he opened the minds of players. I would even say he could extend it as far as, that's why someone like Twistzz left NA to come to FaZe, because it couldn't make a team big enough for him to win. I think they're the other one though, and this is the underrated one. So everyone gets that part, and everyone does that. Woxic's been over to international teams. Almost everyone has. Even Xantares did it. Like, everyone gets that aspect. Basically, one of the only ones who has it is people like Keserato, although the only few people who sort of said no. But the one who I think changed CS forever, but in a weird way ruined it, is karrigan. Because karrigan made it look like, because remember, karrigan's skill set is he can call around anyone. He can basically like loosely call around anyone, and he can do it with stand-ins. So it makes it look too easy to IGL international teams. And I've always said, after all the FaZe clans, and especially when he did that mouse lineup, every org now acknowledges like, oh, we can just have an international team. You don't need it all from one country. It's like, yeah, but you don't have karrigan. I always say that part. Like, the difference is you could get an eco. They are available. There's not many karrigans. So unfortunately, I think people always underestimate how hard it is to like build an international project from the ground up. Because remember, NIP didn't start with like an original squad that was already like a real team that had all bases and was good. They didn't just add Snappy. They essentially built this squad almost whole cloth. And it's taken them a long time. But if you look, if you were to do like some sort of graph of progress, I'm pretty sure every month or two would be like a little move up on the graph. And now, if anything, like you say, they're spiking. And now actually, I think this last event or so, we're getting a sense of like, is there now a ceiling? Is there like an area that maybe they can't go past? You saw that in those NAVI games. Maybe they're not actually as good as the team at that level. So maybe, I don't know, maybe they're going to be stuck as like the 12th best team or something. But I think you've seen that it takes time to put these squads in place. So like, I know what you mean. At Cologne, they actually looked like the opposite of the small lands. They actually look like they could have gone even further if, you know, things had gone their way. Whereas at the small land, what was bizarre was you'd think in your brain using like transitive logic, well, if you can do that well against the big teams, you must be awesome against the lower teams. And in general, they are actually. Like at this tournament, they beat everyone who's not a big dog, basically. But if you go to certain lands like that, you can also have times where you fuck up the big game against a small team, and then that's the one that you're not as prepared for. You don't have the angle. So I don't know. NIP for me is like a mixed bag. You never quite know each match day what you're going to get from them, but I do think the project overall has been successful, and especially if they get to the major, I think overall you will have to deem it to be a success. The question now for me, the more interesting one, like I say, is where's the ceiling for this team? How high can it go?
That's a really interesting perspective. I'm glad you're mentioning the smaller LAN in Bucharest. That was the DraculaN. I was actually there, right? And that one had that vibe of an old school Counter-Strike LAN because it's being organized in the Nexus gaming facility, I guess. Internet cafe is literally like a basement where they have an internet cafe, and all the players are there, all the teams are there. NAP energy-wise, they looked like they had given up before the event had even started, which is a really weird thing to say for an event like this. It felt like they were constantly, I don't want to say frustrated, but just not in the mood, right? You know, when you can see that someone's apparently not enjoying themselves too much. So for me, that was, for me...
By the way, if you were there, let me ask you a quick question.
All right.
This is something I also wondered about. When I hear about people going to these lands, like that one where Liquid is going to go to like some Polish land or whatever. Like, one thing I think people always forget is, if you're a pro player, another part that'll be weird about that is you're only used to the super professional high-end lands. You're used to like the ones where they pick you up in the shuttle and they have the food right for you and the PC's always great and the practice room. Like, was this more like some of those lands I've seen? I don't know about this specific one. Some of them just look like BYOC lands. Like those ones in America, mate, just look like an old school, like 20 years ago land. What's the DraculaN like? Where was that on the scale, do you think? So for like other setup and stuff like that.
I think I spoke to a couple people that were at Frag as well and in some LANs in NA, and they told me that they like DraculaN much more. Some of the players, some of the coaches. I think it was all right. Yeah, there was some technical issues. I think the AC was a little bit of a problem, but I think now they've upgraded it for season 2. That's starting in like a couple days. But in general, I think PC-wise, maybe... There was a little bit of a niche, I guess, moment where some of the pros were saying, "Well, the processor is not an AMD, it's an Intel, right?" Which could be a bit of an issue if the Intel isn't too good. But I think in general, players were happy. Yeah, I think it wasn't too bad. for a lot of the guys. I think they were having fun. The only thing was, I mean, I was a little bit ill during the event, and I think there was a couple of the players that were a little bit ill. So
Right.
that always makes it a bit more, I guess, difficult to enjoy. But in general, I would say it was nice. I think obviously it's far from, you know, you're not getting the shuttle from the 5-star hotel with the spa and everything right to the venue. You're not getting 3 meals a day, and it's one of those lands where you pay a fee to enter, right? And you pay for a lot
Oh,
of the
yeah,
things. Well, the
true. Yeah.
organization pays for a lot of the things. So,
Right. Yeah.
but as far as it goes from what is being given to the players, what is being provided, because they are renting a lot of the things. I think the admins were really good. I think every single time there was an issue, there was admins always on the case. And I spoke to some of the players, and they said that they're pretty happy with the work of the admins, even in technical pauses. Because I think at this point, every single LAN, even tier 1 LANs, have massive technical issues, and
Oh,
this is
sure.
something that
Yeah.
the players are used to. But in general, I'd say it was pretty positive coming out of the players. I think at least from the ones that I spoke to.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I think it was all right. I didn't speak to anyone on NIP because again, they were not really in the mood, I don't think. But the thing that I was starting to lean into a bit. I feel like now in StarLadder, there was an obvious switch of what was going on. Because obviously right after DraculaN, they flew over to Philadelphia. Then they lost to NRG in the grand final, interesting enough, and they finished second. Snappy said something really interesting in an interview after one of the games that they played in Budapest, or Bucharest, sorry. Oh, no, Budapest. Yeah, I am confusing those. We shouldn't be talking about those two events at the same time. But he said something really interesting about them scratching the entire Stratbook in the plane alongside Exist on the way back from Frag, and just building it from the ground up. And one of the main things that we were able to notice, obviously we did that one with Devilwalk and with Frankie, and there was guys like Neo and Jackie and B-Doc and Lucy on the broadcast. All of us noticed one really simple thing, and that was it really did look a little bit more familiar to how ENCE used to play a couple years ago, what NAP were doing right now, to how NAP was playing at the start of the year. So you're looking at a lot of aggressive plays. You're looking at CT side constant pressure, not letting the T's, for example, get comfortable post plant positions, just constantly pushing smokes, going for a lot of Bozy plays, going for a lot of brave Counter-Strike, which I was thinking about, because Alexi B then comes out and says, well, we think that they've been playing like this for a couple months, but then Snappy comes out and says, well, we actually changed everything. So my main question here is, do I believe that NAP have actually scratched everything and they are on the way to playing a lot more entertaining style of Counter-Strike, or is that them just trying to, you know, I guess say that for PR reasons or whatever? Because then Alexi B comes out and says, well, they're playing the same way. But I actually think NAP are on the right track. I feel like the main issue, and why I started explaining all of this, I think the main issue of this team is probably the lack of confidence in some of the games. I think they just need a couple good results in a row to find the way forward. Because, and I think you would agree, and that leans into the second point that I wanted, or the second topic that I wanted to discuss. Renko has been really, really, I want to say, I just not
He's
good
the
enough.
obvious missing player, mate.
Just not
Yeah.
good enough. Yeah,
You
yeah. I
look
was
at their
hoping
roster,
for a nice
almost
way to
every
see it.
player, almost every player on the roster performs at the statistical level you would expect, except Wrinkle. And
Yeah.
the problem is this: it's not that you watch his game and go, he's just a fraud, isn't he? He's just not actually that good a player. No, he's probably the most inconsistent, like, star potential player I've seen in years, mate. Because there are games he has, and especially, like, it looks like his mentality, I've always thought, in the game, how he, like, tries to attack, etc. Looks like he has star potential, but the difference is, if I contrast this on the same weekend where I was switching channels, if I just go over and look at MongolZ on FURIA, that's night and day, mate. I can rely on that guy to carry more series, to be the best player on his team. I do think Wrinkle is the biggest problem right now, because he was the original guy you sort of have built the squad around, because he looked like he had this real potential, especially at the level he was at before NIP. But if I look at the rest of the team, I think almost everyone else on the team's fine, mate. Like, it's funny, people might think because I wasn't a Saw fan. No, the U-Jerks guy was the one player I did like on Saw. Actually, I could tell that guy. The eye test did check out for him when he did that Cologne run last year. He was the one that you should have kept. He was when they had the Aris Doses guy. It's like, right now we're pushing the boat out a bit. I don't know about that. You can have one of those players.
Sure.
So and the Expecations guy, by the way, looks great. That looks like a really good fucking pickup. Like, I'm not surprised there were teams like G2 in the mix for this guy. It's actually really good. So I think the rest of the team is really good, but I'm actually glad you took that as the first point, because I am a fan in theory of Wrinkle.
Yeah.
But that's why I say in theory, it's of the potential he has. But it actually, if anything, I could even argue he's maybe regressed a little bit this last period. And I feel like if he was playing, it doesn't actually have to be at the MongolZ level. If he was just at the level of like a w0nderful even, I think this team would actually probably win this event, mate.
You know what's the interesting thing, and I had a point about this when it comes down to Rinko. So he was really underwhelming in that game that they played against Navi, especially the first one. So the first one that they played against Navi was a 9-13, 7-13 loss, and Rinko finished the game with a -5 swing. Right, you're looking at Wonderful and you're looking at a +7. Now, I'm not even going to compare the ratings because the difference is even more than double when it comes down to this. But I think we can focus on the swing because it represents the impact a little bit better. That's why I wanted to have the conversation with you, because I don't know if you remember, but we've had that conversation about Rinko a couple times. But the last times we were having it, he was one of the only well-playing players on the team alongside Shush.
Yeah.
And now the predicament has changed a little bit to the point where, as you pointed out, Shush, interestingly enough, now taking a lot more initiative, both T and CT sides. He's nailing everything. Ujerks doesn't have to be the entry anymore because of Kaspersky and Shush taking more initiative, so he's more comfortable. Kaspersky's playing well. Snappy's doing what he has to do as an in-game leader, and as you said, we're not underestimating how difficult it is to actually lead an international team and build it from the ground up. So my question to you right now, and the one thing that I've been waking up in the middle of the night with cold sweat on my back thinking about, is would I say that I would agree if NIP came out with a statement that they want to bench Rinko and try someone else out? Or do I believe that this is just a bad time in his career?
I mean, the problem is a lot of his actual hype in the previous years was all based on like online hype, etc. And the problem is now we're talking about LAN Counter-Strike, and in this scenario, we're talking about you're already competing against tier one, you're competing against teams like Navi, and we now expect you to show up. That's why I give the example of MongolZ. I don't say that, by the way, to say like just go and get a MongolZ. The whole point is we didn't even know there was a MongolZ when FURIA got him. That looked like by the way, if people don't get it, this is why you have to sort of know inside stuff in the scene to really know like whether someone's a surprise or not.
Yeah.
Right? When Fnatic signed Jambo, it's only people who are plebs that I know that were like, what the fuck's this, 700k?
Yeah.
Actually, loads of coaches stuff like, no, he's good. Like, we were thinking about getting that guy. Rinko wasn't on everyone's radar before NIP. Like, that's the thing. Molodai wasn't actually, like, he was a player a couple of teams were looking at, but no one was like, you got to get this guy. No one knew he'd be this good. So it's always a gamble. And I do think as well, I think AWP is the biggest gamble in Counter-Strike, because I always say, I think the biggest mismatch in professional CS at tier 1 is AWP versus AWP. Like, anytime, that's why people in CS2, unfortunately, just spend all their time insulting all the AWPers. Like, if you notice, the only AWPer, mate, that is actually allowed to be the best, maybe Molodai is joining this group, is just Siwu. Even m0NESY gets endlessly criticised. Yeah. Everyone says Shiro just baits. Wonderful is wonderful. Like, some pious doesn't play that. Like, mate, if you listen to fans, there's like 2 good AWPers in the whole world, because the AWPers are just way worse in the game. But actually, I always thought it was already a role that had a lot of pressure on it anyway. Like, if you don't know, I'm one of the ultimate combatants in CSGO of the logic there is such a thing as a support AWPer. I don't think it's a thing. I think a support AWPer is just a bad player who's just being shielded by his team for not being able to use the weapon properly. It's the reason it's so expensive. Like, you build your game around that player if you have a good player. So to me, you should probably be a star if you're an AWPer. And I think in CS2, because the game is so much more seemingly about aggressive riflers, you got to be a really good AWPer. So put it this way, if you said to me, we're going to bench Rinko and we're going to gamble on like another up and coming talent, like we get someone else who's got a little bit of hype but hasn't got a big team, I wouldn't necessarily be against it, mate. I do still think Rinko potentially could make it one day. Still, by the way, hasn't had that many lands. That's the other thing for me. It's not like he played like 50 lands and he was crap. He's had like a few, so I'd still maybe give him a chance. But I know what you mean. Like, the difference is if tomorrow they could bring in like a solid AWPer who shows off a few big games, that could transform this team. Everything else is there as far as I can tell in the team. It all looks great.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering about as well, because as you pointed out, it's a bit of a risk, right? Because and it's a really good example that you give with Jambo, because he had already played a major. So it's a lot easier when you look at someone that is qualified for a major, played at that high level, and then you're looking at Rinko, who was playing on B8 before he joined, but B8 back then wasn't the B8 now that is qualifying for tier 1 events every now and then. They were just a tier 2 standard team, I guess. Yeah. And MongolZ, I think that's the wildest one, because if you ask people that were watching tier 2, tier 3 Counter-Strike, they would tell you this guy is sick, but they would tell you this guy is sick for like 20 other people, and he turns out to be the special one, right? Yeah. So yeah, it was.
And you can never know when that happens. Some of that's luck, obviously. You know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think there's obviously a lot of things that you can't know that could be issues with an AWPer until you pick him up, right? You can do the best scouting in the world, but I mean, I'm sure Ash did his research on Kersey as well. Look at how that one turned out. It didn't really work out. But for Rinko, I am a little bit worried, because same as you, I do think that this guy has enormous potential, and I think he is still able to farm a lot of the lower tier teams and a lot of the guys that he doesn't quite feel the pressure against. So that is the one thing that gives me hope. I'm not sure if it's the wrong thing to say, but I believe that if you do just get hit by nerfs against better teams, it is, as you pointed out, all about getting a little bit of experience and playing more lands, and then eventually maybe you're going to be able to get it. But the fact is that throughout the last 5-6 events, he hasn't really registered a rating that is higher than 1.02, which includes LAN and online Counter-Strike. So he's in a bit of a tough spot, and I'm not really sure what to make out of it.
Thing is, though, I also do agree with what you said before. The problem as well is this, though. It is a little bit like the Brokey effect, right? What people might not realize is my main issue with Brokey is that he played bad and Simple was available. And in theory, the premise was Simple was motivated and he was going to practice hard.
Okay.
So the reason why I was in favor of swapping him out is because essentially I'm taking Brokey on the way down versus Simple on the way up. That was my logic, right? I do think the one thing that was unfair to Brokey, though, is if you remember in 2024, there was times when other players were playing shit in FaZe. Like, actually, by the way, Rops even had a bad second season. People forget it because he had an awesome major. Like, some of the other players had dropped off big time, and it was just Brokey who used to turn up in some of those matches. So I always think it's a bit harsh as an org to basically say, thanks for carrying the others through the hard period, but now that we're through that and you're playing badly, you're fired. Like,
right.
the fuck? So if you are Wrinkle, you could also say the same thing, Ted, because you are right. If you go to the first season this year, he was like the only reason to watch this team, along with Snappy. Like, he was the carry, and actually he basically had to play well almost any time they had a chance. So in a way, it feels a bit fucked up that Yen gets you to this season. You finally at the lands, you know, but the fruits of his work.
Yeah.
And then it's like, right, you're fired, and then you just bring some other guy in. So that's also why I feel like on an emotional and social level, I doubt they will actually do this, even though we're speculating. Like, because we're doing it like Football Manager. Like, I'd bench this person, I put this other person in the stats. I don't think NIP will actually do it though, Ted. I think they will just ride out the season with this guy. They'll just keep this roster.
I really hope so. I really hope so, because I think I'm still looking through that perspective and saying, because like a week ago I was having that conversation with someone, I don't remember who, and we were speculating what happens if Navi were to replace w0nderful. Who do they get? And I was like, well, I know another Ukrainian AWPer that I would put my money on to play on Navi. Would you
love to see someone like Blade work with him, mate?
Absolutely.
Fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're looking at the stylistics as well. And the issue for, I guess, with w0nderful for a lot of people is that he's a little bit too static. Maybe he's a bit too vanilla with the way that he approaches oping.
You know when he joined NAVI,
AWPer.
Everyone famously said one of the biggest problems you have is you have to fill Simple's shoes. In
Yeah.
some ways, even though Simple isn't even at NAVI and there's not even an option, that feels like it feels like w0nderful isn't competing against himself, mate. He's still competing against Simple. And the problem is, stylistically, they couldn't be more different, could they? Like, he doesn't have all the flash of fucking Simple. So I feel like if you're an NAVI fan, you're almost born to hate this guy and think he sucks as an AWPer because he's more in the Shiro grade of AWPer than the Simple style. Whereas, put it this way, even though the numbers aren't there, I think Wrinkle's way more like a Monacy Simple type AWPer. At least he wants to be, clearly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fun fact, by the way. Wrinkle was one of those guys that when they were growing up copied the sense of Simple, and he was playing the exact same DPI and sensitivity, and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to become Simple.
He's even tried, if you notice, trash talking like Simple. His problem is, though, he hasn't had enough lands where he was actually good enough, so it's backfired a bunch of times. So, no, but I know what you mean, though. Like, put it this way, when I saw the PGL earlier this year when they had the old roster with the Aristotle, I actually did think he looked fucking cracked at that one. I thought he looked really good, but I agree. He definitely didn't do the business at these lands.
No, absolutely not. Also, I guess we need to take it into consideration that plus Casper minus Arrows adds another aggressive rifle, probably makes life a little bit more difficult for the AWPer, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it goes. Next one on the line is PARIVISION, and that we're not going to spend too much time on this one because obviously I think they're still out of the major potentially. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to watch PARIVISION too much. The reason we're talking about those guys mainly is Jame, obviously. I have a lot of things to say about the others. Well, Jame and Dastan as well. Have you had the chance to watch them? What do you think about PARIVISION?
Here's the thing. I don't actually watch. Obviously, if people don't know, PARIVISION mainly just plays 1 billion online games. They are one of the fucking...
I can give you a fun fact, by the way, if you want. So the last time, well, James' most active year in professional Counter-Strike was 2018 or 2019. He played around 280 games or 280 maps. Right now, he is on track to beat that. He's almost there. He's like 10, 20 maps below that, and he's probably going to beat that. So 2025 is the most grind year of James' career ever already.
Like, basically, to me, if people don't know, they are one of, like, the dons of Tier 2 online CS. Like, these people play, it seems like, every other day, or every day, sometimes on certain weeks. They play them, Bet Boom, OG, BC, all these squads just play all the fucking time. And they're always going deep, by the way. They're actually one of the better online teams. It's why a lot of people do think, if you look at fully enough, even the VPs of the world and all these Russian teams that seem to struggle for an IGL. It's why, if you notice, people are starting to gradually, almost like some Sauron returning shit, start to mention, like, what about Jame though? Because there just aren't IGLs, are there?
Right.
He's actually one of the ones, just like Boomich, who's got a good team that actually online, not at the lands admittedly, just tears up. Like they're nearly always a threat to go deep in all those online tournaments, if not win them. Like they actually match up against a lot of teams very well, including, by the way, even like the BC games of the world that have the simples. Which are, so because of simple, basically, I know I have watched these guys way more. Normally what I would do is like you were saying about other squads like B8. If there's a team that's like owning online, or Monty when it was before that Blast Paris major ages ago, it's more like right before the major, if they qualify, I'll watch them and watch some of the games and go, all right, I see what's going on here. For this one, because I've been watching these simple games to see what his level's like, he's been playing these squads with, so I've actually seen PARIVISION a decent amount, actually. And I have to say, they are a solid squad. Like, I wasn't surprised they were a threat at this tournament. Like, once you get past Nip and Navi, they should be in that mix. Maybe they haven't got the same big names beyond Jame, but actually, that's not even a bad mix of players, mate. They seem like they perform pretty well.
No, they do. You know what's the most interesting thing about those guys? This is where finally the 4 years of watching Tier 2 and Tier 3 Counter-Strike could come in handy. All 4 players outside of Jame on this team were entries at a certain point of their careers. So it's not even like when him and Dastan were gathering up the lineup, it's not like they were saying, well, now we need the support guy. Now we need a guy that anchors B8 PARIVISION. Now we need this guy. Now we need that guy. No, they were just like, okay, this guy shoots, he runs, he's good, we get him. We'll teach him how to play the Counter-Strike. We want to teach him how to play. That is the hilarious part about this team, because you're looking at w0nderful. He used to be an entry and an aggressive guy. z0, same thing. z0 was the second star to Tenier on Gun 5 last year. You're looking at Noda, who all his life has been a really aggressive and star level player. And you're looking at AW, who used to play on Amco. That was that Amco that had the really good game against NIP. And Cybershock, he was again an entry and an aggressive guy. And now you're looking at a team that has a couple of Volco pieces in z0 and AW. w0nderful is the type of an anchor player that, because everyone goes out and says that he's the entry of the team, actually, and the star of the team. I want to call bullshit right now, because he anchors 3 small bomb sites and 3 big bomb sites on CT side. He still is the guy to engage in the most amount of opening fights on the CT side. So Jame, I think he's created something really cool. I think he's created a team with identity, something really unique. And I am really saddened by the fact that they will probably miss out on the major unless they win. I think they have the Russian LAN event coming up soon. If they win that, I think they might get enough points to get in, but it's still a little bit weird. I feel like he's created a team with identity. And the main thing is, Jame is not playing boring Counter-Strike anymore. Sure, sometimes there's going to be T-sides where 11 out of 10, 11 out of 12 rounds, he's going to hit the same bomb side, or they'll finish the same bomb side. But CT side, for example, his team is putting pressure, his team is playing aggressive CS. It's obvious that he's not the only one doing the talking. So I actually think he's matured a bit as an in-game leader, and his view for the game somehow is kind of like he left all the bad things in VP, but they're still stuck with them. And PARIVISION with Jame and Dastan, that's supposed to be the same team, is now looking a little bit more like a Vanguard, where they put out some interesting things. A Vanguard from a couple years ago, obviously. They have a unique approach to the game. They play Counter-Strike that is not necessarily meta, but it's not necessarily outdated either. It's somewhere in the middle. And they actually do look good. I am a little bit sad that they won't be at the major, but I think they're onto something.
You said that you don't take the w0nderful guys. Do you have Jame as the best player?
Ooh. No, I meant role-wise. I meant role-wise. I'm not taking the BS that w0nderful is the star, because he isn't. Like he's just a phenomenal anchor that can turn anchor roles into being a star. You know. But who's the guy? I mean,
I see what you mean. So essentially, in this team, he's doing what Heavy God does in G2. Like,
pretty much, yeah. You've got the shit roles, but you're the best.
Yeah. Right, okay.
But yeah, Jame is the best player on this team. I think it's...
Yeah, I think so. It's fair.
Yeah, maybe there's guys that have the potential to be better than him in a couple of years, right? But
the z0 guy's definitely skilled. He's got skills, man.
Yeah, w0nderful as well. But Jame is the major winner in MVP. And if you look at his rating, it's kind of like... I mean, it's the same with Simple, even though Simple does it even more vocally, where you just have a tier 1 player playing tier 2 Counter-Strike, and it's so bloody
And remember,
obvious.
In theory, Jame it was even literally shown in one of those articles by Nero, Jame was one of the #1 players that, in theory, the changing of HLT rating was supposed to impact. Like the old style he played that was super baity, when they did the immediate, like, whatever it was, 2.0 or whatever it was, I can't remember if it was the most recent one, they showed he was one of the people that dropped the most by rating, because his old style, obviously, like, I think the old rating overrated if you saved or something and you just survived the round. So that shows, like, if you look at James' rating now, He doesn't play the exact same way, guys. He just doesn't. Like, he actually has updated. And I always thought this, back in the day when we had those two AWPers that were the IGLs, we had KD and we had Jame. I always thought Jame actually was the better AWPer. The joke is actually not KD was the better IGL, but I thought Jame was the better AWPer of the two. So he is also a good player. My problem with him, all he ever was, you know, people go and press W religion. He was press fucking S religion, mate. He used to just go backwards all the time. That was the only issue. So I feel like in CS2, he realised, even by the way, in VP, you saw he realised this. He just realised that doesn't work, and it just forced him to actually engage with the game. And he is a good player. He definitely has skill.
I think people don't give him enough credit for how intelligent of a player he is.
Sure.
I don't think he's. I don't think he is stupid enough to stay in his own way, in his own ways for like 6-7 years and not change anything and expect a different outcome.
It sort of work. I always say this. Yeah. He used to play that boring stuff, but they used to win a lot of fucking games, man. Especially a lot they had no business winning.
He won a major.
And on maps they had no business winning. Yeah, it was ridiculous. No, but the amount of times also they would upset like top teams with like a 3-map, you know, 16-14 epic every map. And then also another reason, mate, that there's no way this guy's an idiot. It's because I always used to say, when it comes to people like Jame and Shiro, I almost just want it to be like, you know, that premise where supposedly when the conquistadors went to the New World in America, they supposedly burned the ships because the premise was, we're not going back. There's no, take that out of your mind. We're going forwards and we're going to die or we're going to win. I've always thought if you make that happen to Shiro and Jame, so sometimes it's just on the map, there's no retreat point. They're actually really good in clutches, bro. Like, these guys win clutches for fun. Like, Jame's actually a very good clutch player. His problem before was just not taking the clutch, just going, fuck it, I'll save 1v2 or whatever. Like, that was his only issue. So I feel like that's not even part of his game. That was just a good player, mate.
Yeah, he is, and he's leading a really exciting team. I think one of the teams, me and King T had a conversation about this in the previous episode of the TikTok, because one of the teams that I think are worth watching, even if they don't make the major. You know, if there is like a cheeky DraculaN or a Polish LAN or something else happening right before the major and PARIVISION go and play it, it is actually worth your time to turn on a game and watch those guys play, because there's a lot of potential in this team, and they are essentially, that to me screams of Vanguard 2.0, but there's some heavier hitters in comparison to that of Vanguard line.
Well, especially because everyone forgets, Ted. This is the sad thing. When you said that line that like 2018 was his most active year, yeah, because people forget. A Vanguard really is one of the craziest Cinderella stories ever at that StarLadder major in 2019. I always told people, I knew who that team was before because they used to go to like, they had like a LAN 2 months before that major, mate, where they went and it was them and like FURIA and some other like, you know, whatever. And they didn't even win it, mate. They were like fourth or something. Yeah. Like, they used to be in the circuit. They used to just be like this, grinders. They were just people who had to go to every tiny LAN or play every online qualifier. So of course they would have played 1 billion maps. Like, it makes sense. And so I know what you mean. Like, this looks like you've gone back to your roots because you don't have any big names here with you. You didn't bring along people from VP. You didn't bring back even your old boys from the other squads there and the other teams in the CIS region. Like, you've started from zero again, but you've managed to do the same concept. You formed an identity. It's the same as the Vanguard. People forget this. People will remember late VP or when they had like Yakinda and they remember having other stars in the team. No, in the Vanguard, Jame was their best player. He just was. Come on.
I mean, they had Sanji, Kicker, Buster, Chris, like there was
the
no
super
stars.
old Adren even at the end, mate. He was washed as fuck. But they still got to the final. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. I still remember that final, by the way. I was so freaking disappointed watching this game.
Because they also that was an example, by the way, of where, like, in their brain, I can tell they were happy coming second. It just looked like they gave up completely, didn't
I mean,
they?
that was Prime Astralis.
It was pretty good at Astralis, yeah.
Yeah, it was Prime Astralis, so it was a bit of a little bit of. Oh, also I was frustrated because obviously EG reached the quarterfinal when back then Cirque was still a good player. We will keep it going forward. So I will give you a choice now. I'll tell you two of the teams because I've got a lot of things to say about both of them, but I don't want to spend too much time on here. We've got Passion UA and Bait. So Passion UA, new iteration, complexity, Passion NA, we could say. Or we've got Bait, who came in with no playtime and actually did manage to make top 3. So which one are you more interested in as of right now? Which one has...
I mean, I would have to take Bait because the thing is...
Okay.
At least for me, I know what you mean. That I still don't really understand the point of the Passion UA one. That's like you've just taken complexity and added like one player, and that's decent. But it's like it doesn't, for me, fundamentally change like who they are as a squad.
Okay.
The thing I like about Bait is they've been the entire time in this tier 2, you play 1 billion games mess. And it's true. This was actually one of the first times I've actually seen them do it more on LAN, though. I did think at the major that they were actually one of the teams that underwhelmed me. I thought actually they were ready to sort of take the next step and do some big shit online and have like a run, you know, and threaten the big teams. Whereas the problem is, I thought on land they always looked a little bit worse and they would always lose every close game. But one thing I do like about B8 is they've also had that core quite a long time now, and they have like a completely strong identity. You could just find all the aspects of what maps they're good on, how they play. So I do like the structure of the team. I think it's like a cleverly put together team, especially because based on the things I've heard about the org, doesn't sound like they're working with a lot of money, mate. They just have to attract the right people and hope they stay with them.
You know what's the fun thing about B8? The fun thing was right before StarLadder, so prior to StarLadder, they had 7 best of 3s registered in the second season of the year. So between the middle of July and this event, they had only 7 best of 3s, which I think that's the lowest number probably out of every single team in the top 100, maybe, right? They were just not playing Counter-Strike. They played a couple LAN events. They didn't go well. They played that Perfect World event, that 3D Max one in China, literally before the start of FISSURE as well. And they lost to Vision and they lost to Tyloo as well. So it was a little bit underwhelming. The only team they beat was a team that was just formed for this event. It was just a local Asian teams, a team with players that are not really well known. So they go into this tournament and they started off really weird because they got completely dominated by PARIVISION in the first game. And then I was thinking, well, it's going to be the same. I mean, they did get dominated in terms of being a 0-2. But again, it was the same, I guess, premise that you were lingering towards, the fact that they always lose close situations when it comes down to LAN. It could be a close map. It could be a couple close rounds that accumulate to them looking like they've been completely blown out of the water, even if it was a closer game or it had the potential to be. And this is something that Hetrick spoke about as well. B8 for me is a really difficult one to quantify because I think they are trying to transition from an online team that grinds to a team that practices a little bit more and plays fewer LANs. But also in my head, this is a lot riskier, isn't it? Because you are putting all your money pretty much on those events going well. Because B8 were in a position where if they had lost one more best of 3, and the best of 3s that they did win were really, really close. I mean, you lose to PARIVISION, then you start winning, but they win a 2-1 versus OG, a 2-0 versus Passion UA, which had an overtime game, was really close, and then a 2-1 against Gentlemates. And they lose one of those. I'm not sure if they were getting enough VRS points to actually get into the major zone. And for me, it felt like they just put everything they had this season. So like the first 3 months of the season, they put into this one event to make their way into the major, which for me is a really weird strategy.
I mean, it definitely is, but at the same time, they just spent so much of the rest of the time they've had this core just playing online matches. So maybe they're just sick of that. Maybe that gets you after a while. I feel like that does. By the way, I think here's what's weird. It's always the top teams, because they're the ones with the biggest voice, going to all the lands that complain about burnout. I think online CS will burn you out way more, mate. Like, in some ways, that's why actually people, I think, fuck with the fact that Simple's gone to online CS, because it is the hyperbolic time chamber, mate. You play 1 billion games, so you're going to find out really quickly if you like the game, if you enjoy competing still, if you can handle, like, I think when you play for too long like that, though, and you don't get the LAN results, it's going to get to you after a while.
Sure.
I also think they've got one problem in this team, and the problem is obvious to me, which is, like I just said before, I've heard they don't have much money. Obviously, this was an org where, like, technically NPL was even, like, loaned to them at one point in time. He wasn't even actually officially a player there. I do think their entire org their team will just completely collapse if anyone ever picks up NPL, mate, because I think he is the obvious talent in their team. Potentially in both regards, IJling and Fragging even. He just looks like a good player, mate. Like, I think, sadly, he's one of those people. It reminds me, actually, a better version of what happened with LNZ, because everyone, like, fucks with LNZ now. He's on Heroic. But on NIP, everyone wanted him fired. Everyone's still thinking too much about when NPL was in NAVI. And you have to realize that's years ago now, mate. That is years ago. And since then, he looks like he really blossomed as a player. And I'm actually almost surprised he stays in this team. It makes me think he does have some sort of, like, loyalty, or he thinks he can build the squad. Maybe he thinks he can do a Jame, basically, because I do think, like, there's plenty of teams. Think of all the teams always crying about having no IGL. This guy can for real IGL and frag at the same time. He seems like a pretty talented player.
Yeah, I think they made the team a little bit more exciting with Kenzizor at the start of the year. Also, he's just starting to get momentum up, but I do agree with you. I feel like if you are an international team, I'd argue, even though I am a big LNC fan as well, I love him as an in-game leader, and I'm happy he was able to bounce back after what happened on NAP. I actually think MPL is a little bit more talented when it comes down to mechanics. Not even a little bit. I think there's quite a big difference when you're talking about pure firepower.
Well, he just seemed to have to be the IGL, but he could also play without IGL, I believe.
Yeah. If you want to pick up MPL to be your entry or star player and second voice on the team, you can do that as well, right? It's not necessarily the fact that you need to pick him up as an in-game leader. Obviously, he wants to be, but yeah, I think with B8 is really weird, and I completely agree with you. I feel like Hetrick is a big topic that needs to be addressed as well, because I do like him. I think he's very underrated in terms of his in-game IQ, but in the same time, I do think that you are not getting those good performances out of an AWPer that you are expecting to get out of the second most experienced guy on this team, because he did spend enough time on NAP. You could guess that, you could say that mentally he had it easier than MPO, who had to play with frustrated Electronic and Simple on his sides when he was 17. Hedrick had a lot more of a, I want to say, healthy environment around him on NIP, and there was a couple other people that were struggling. So better atmosphere, not playing with I guess the creme de la creme from of toxicity as well around you. So I am expecting a little bit more out of Hedrick. I'm not gonna lie to you. I think he is the type of player that never has struck me as an AWPer that's gonna drop 40 kills. I think his impact lies somewhere else. But when the team is struggling around you, and when you are the second most experienced guy on LAN as well, when you've got that many events like these behind your back, you need to be able to bring in some other impact. Again, if you want to support MPL a little bit more, and all of that, I think, chains up and leads to the point where we say this team has the potential for MPL to justify staying here for a longer period of time, so he doesn't waste his, I guess, good years at the start of his career.
The problem is, I do think Hedrick actually has had his own issue, like we had that earlier discussion. Okay. He just is a person where you put him on LAN against the better teams, he does do way worse. It's not simply just like he's not playing himself as well. He clearly has a bigger issue, because I know what you mean. Like, I actually do think he seems like a fairly smart player in the game. Like, he does seem like he's put his hours in and grinded since the NAVI days, NIP days. I mean, he's also NAVI, he's NAVI Junior. So, no, the issue there, though, is like, it's like the same conversation about all AWPers. It's like, how good can you get, though? Because there is a cap on AWPing, in my opinion. That's like, like I said, that's the rule where if you don't reach a certain threshold, you just won't be a part of tier 1, unfortunately. They'll look past you, and they'll either get the established person or they'll get the next up-and-comer. Like, I also think that's another thing about the AWP role, is the AWP role is also the least forgiving in teams, bro. Like, they always feel like they can go into a grab bag gamble and get someone new. Whereas if you're like a Star Rifle, you could go through months and months, mate, where you have off time because they just think you're going to get it back. But it's just, the problem is, think about the weapon. The AWP, you either hit or you miss. So if you miss, no one gives a fuck what the reason is, mate. If you miss too many times, they kick you out. That's how it goes.
Or maybe Liquid. Maybe Liquid is going to be there to save you and pick you up. They've been notorious with making some great decisions when it comes down to
the joke there would be, because that's one of the only teams that doesn't seem to actually give a fuck about the AWPer. But yeah, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah, I wanted to save the Liquid conversation for a little bit. I was hoping that there was going to be a double transfer out, but I guess they do love making me miserable. Last storyline, really important one when it comes down to Navi. The Passion UA one, I think I'm going to keep for the future a little bit, because I do have some good things to say about this project potentially, but I think it is too early, and it does feel a little bit weird to say it as of right now. So I'm going to leave the door open maybe when the major approaches, because I think after winning one best of 3, they are actually qualifying through NA still, interestingly enough. Even with the roster change, they still have 2 American players. But Navi, that was the main talking point of this entire tournament. Navi went into it. They had to win it. They won it. They lost only one map. The first map that they lost, well, the only map that they lost was the first map that they played, and that was against 9 out of all teams. That was an ENCE that they kicked the event off with. That made everyone on the desk incredibly worried that Navi wouldn't even make it past 9 in the first round, which was going to be a bit of a shame. But they did end up winning. It was their first trophy since Rio 2024. As you said, you've been watching both those events, so I'm not even going to ask you which team you were following the most. I think it's quite obvious. Do you think that Navi played... Well, did Navi, I guess, meet your expectations of how they should have played throughout this event?
I think so. I mean, one of the things I think's been a problem for Navi in general, it wasn't just this year, it was even a problem when they had their successful run last year, is they've never come close to being the team that has the widest map pool, mate. They've always had their strengths, and they've actually had to have quite shrewd vetoes wherever possible to get little edges. So put it this way, like, for me, Navi did their job at this tournament. They won all the matches they need to. Crucially, the fact that they 2-0'd at IP both times was really impressive. That was the other team that was the threat for them there, for me, in my opinion. And then if they get pushed to the odd 3 maps, I don't take that as like the end of the world, as long as you close it out. I did think generally they were actually like quite far ahead of the field at this tournament. Like, it wasn't just name value. They were clearly the best team there. That's why I put that thing on Twitter before the event, where the narrative for Navi isn't like, oh, it's you got to just win the event, mate. Like, if you're Navi, bro, and you can't win this trophy, what trophy are you ever going to win? Like, this roster, you may as well just chuck it in there or start doing your transfers. So I think they hit the par, they hit the threshold of what they were supposed to do.
I think they did, and it's a fun fact because we already mentioned w0nderful's name. It's a fun fact that this was the highest rated LAN event that w0nderful has played as a NAVI player. He registered a 132 and is the third highest rated LAN in his entire career, when the first one was the Flow Fire League, if you remember that one. It's a South American LAN event, you know, which he won with Spirit in 2022. And then there's some kind of a Logitech Cup that he won when he was playing on Gucci Squad, which was a Gucci Academy. So we're not really putting too much emphasis on those. So it is the most significant performance that he's ever had on LAN in big Counter-Strike, which was great. I think that was, from my perspective, because I've always been someone that really valued w0nderful when he was on Sprout before he joined Navi, and before that, and obviously when he was on Spirit as well. I think when he was on Sprout, he was one of the best players in Tier 2 Counter-Strike, so that's why I'm not buying into the bullshit of people saying, well, he's never been a StarLadder. No, he was. He was on Sprout. He was a massive prospect. Everyone knew that. Coaches knew that. Players knew that. Everyone that was watching knew that. I think that event was the first time that I watched w0nderful play, and I said to myself, this is the player that I liked casting 2 years ago when he was on Sprout. This is the same guy, or 3 years ago when he was on Sprout. And I don't know if it's replicable. I don't know if the reason is because he's just used to playing against the best teams in the world, and then suddenly he gets to play against a bunch of really good Tier 2 teams, but not really guys that are competing for trophies usually. I don't know if it's just a mismatch of level and him being used to higher level opposition, or he's improving. I really hope he is, though. I definitely hope he is.
I think he is the most misunderstood player in World Counter-Strike, bro. As in, not like he's over it, it's the other way around. He's actually underrated, serially underrated, mate, because here's the problem. First of all, statistically, it's never matched up with what fans said. You listen to fans, you'd think this guy is like the lowest fragger
like a 0.7
every game. Yeah, you would think he actually fucking sucked, bro. His real problem for me is this, that within his NAVI period, he has gotten into a lot of playoffs, and especially a lot of semis and finals. And he certainly is a player I do think gets weaker the higher the stakes score. If you put him in a big final, he's probably not the one on Navi that's going to carry the game if they win the tournament. That used to be like B8, or it would be mainly fucking GL, or the odd time Immo would just carry the... Like, it wouldn't be wonderful. And part of the reason why I think even touches on what I said before, usually he'd be playing a better op at that point, man. That's when he'd be playing m0nderful, he'd be playing fucking ZWoo, playing some stud players. So at that point, I do think... And then this ties into... So first of all, I think it was never that he was bad. I think he just looked bad in some big moments, and that's very memorable. That sticks in people's brains. But I've never understood this story that like he sucked and you should cut him, because I always say the same thing. I say it's like when people tell me they have to cut Carrigan. I always just say, don't tell me that unless you got a name coming. Unless you can tell me the name who's coming in, we're not cutting him. What are you talking about? Like, I'll take the weak and the strong part, because I don't think you're going to get better elsewhere. So I've always thought the same thing in Navi. Like, unless it was simple, who are we bringing in this team to be better than this guy? And again, miss me with like MongolZ. Like, no one knew MongolZ before. That's completely out of nowhere. We can't do that. Like, you can't say that after the fact. We haven't got a time machine. And also, by the way, if you'd have said you were cutting this guy for MongolZ at the beginning of the year, everyone would lose their fucking mind. They'd be like, what? We were just number one. You're bringing in a random guy for Kazakhstan. So that's not even a fair point. And also, to me, I do think you hit it at it there. I don't think he plays in Navi, bro, the way he played at all in Spirit and Sprout. I mean, people forget this detail. You know, everyone did give Dexter credit when he was in Spirit, for when he got to that semi at that major Antwerp.
Yeah.
Everyone
forgets that the next major, w0nderful was in his spot on Spirit, and they got to the top 8. Like, they were at the playoffs too. Like, but people just delete that from their brain. And in fact, I always did wonder, one of the weirdest moves ever for me is why he went from Spirit to fucking Sprout. That's going down for me. I always thought this guy was a good player. And I agree, he just carried when he was in Sprout, mate. He looked really good. But the problem I think he has is this. This is why you've never, ever seen an interview where even vaguely Blade alluded to the idea w0nderful was the problem or would get fired. Or even said, like, you know, our AWPer's the problem. He's never done that. In fact, he's gone out of his way, even recently, to say explicitly that people like w0nderful and Alexa aren't the problem. They're not the reason that they get kicked. And the reason why I think that is significant, Ted, is I am almost certain that when this guy came into Navi, he understood like the rest of us. I'm not fucking Simple, mate. And I'm joining Simple's team that was all built around Simple. Like, so I can't do that. And Blade, that was never his vision for w0nderful. I think when w0nderful came in, Blade was like, right, you know what? I just get full control of this team now. Before I had to sort of like give Simple his space and then I sort of work with the others. No, now I've just got a whole team. And if you notice, he has never, it's why I give the example, I compared w0nderful more like Shiro. He has never had like the MongolZ simple green light, mate, where you just do whatever you want, you just break the strat, you go for some crit. He's not even that aggressive a player in terms of how he peaks on people. He is more like the standard style AWPer for me. So I do think he definitely, I would guess he does everything Blade tells him to do. Now, whether you like that or not depends what style of CS you want. Like I would say, by the way, Blade for me is a style of like IGL. He is more like some sort of a Pep Guardiola of fucking CS.
Right.
He's not trying to play beautiful open Counter-Strike where people just do whatever they want and do, you know, in the analogy of football, he's hit crosses a million miles and do crazy runs. No, he's the guy. Like, here's the system. You play these passes and get into this area. Then from this area, the striker score. That's like what his system's like. But as a result, if you're the AWPer, yeah, I'm sorry, the riflers clearly get the freedom, in my opinion. In this team, the AWPer has like specific places he has to be. He has specific lines he has to hold. He has certain times where you're not supposed to peek. You're supposed to sort of play compact. So I do think, like, in some senses, he's benefited. He's had all this success. He's had trophies, been fucking won a major. But I do think it's probably actually limited what people think his game's capable of. Because if you notice, fans always assume for some reason that the player's making all the choices. They think the player just chooses how he plays, where he goes to start. Listen, maybe there are teams like that, but I don't think Navi's one of them, mate. I feel like if you're wonderful, you're playing on rails a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of like the moments when someone dies in a really silly way where they're not clearing something and then someone is saying, oh, why doesn't he clear that? Well, maybe someone didn't do their job in the round and he's not supposed to, but there was someone that was supposed to do something so he doesn't get killed from there, right? It's things that we can never know, but I do agree with you. I feel like, because I've had the chance to speak to Feed, who was the assistant coach on Sprout when w0nderful was there, obviously. And even back then, he told me that w0nderful is an incredibly easy AWPer to work with. First, because he's really smart. Second, because he is willing to follow the game plan and do whatever the team needs him to do, right? So he's not one of those guys that's going to go out of his way. Obviously, he told me that he was one of the best mechanical players that he's seen, which I guess could be said for someone that was farming tier 2 Counter-Strike a lot. But I do agree with you. I think w0nderful has been misunderstood, and I feel like not even misunderstood because he's not going out making his case. It's just like people are making really weird accusations of him not being capable of doing more when you don't really know how much of this is his decision of how he wants to approach it. And even if it isn't, I mean, as you pointed out, he was part of the best team of last year. He won a major, he won a couple of events. So apparently this is what works, right? Maybe this is how he should be playing, and maybe this is the type of an AWPer Blade needs. And as you said, if you want to kick him, point out a replacement that's going to come in and that's going to be able to work in that system and put out the same performances, because we can't just say that, for example, an aggressive AWPer like Rinko, because we were talking about him, or Dexter is going to come in and they are going to be putting out the same numbers. They might even drop off more because they're just uncomfortable playing in that system.
Yeah.
So
and I also do think, by the way, notice a trend that's emerging here. I think it's the same in all sports, bro. Fans, like, here's the real problem. Most people, when they watch the game, don't just watch for their favorite player. They also watch for action. They want it to be exciting.
Yeah.
So if you follow like a sport like the UFC, they want everyone to be a stand-up fighter who just fights and bangs in the center of the ring. They don't want point fighting or tactical fighting or defensive fighting or like people who neutralize the game with the ground game. They want it to be like that. You go for it and you just basically go all in. You're the press. They essentially, CS fans love press W players. It's why I was not surprised at all, even though his numbers did improve, that people were totally ready to forgive Yekindar for all those past years. Like, well, just delete those. Like, they act like he had a bad month, mate. He had bad years, bro. But we're going to delete that because he plays a super aggressive style that's really high tempo and it's fucking awesome when it works. The problem is, if you're ever the player who plays more defensive or conservative, you can put up God numbers and you're a bomb, bro. Examples, Blame F, Shiro, mate, these guys' numbers, you couldn't get better numbers at their role, but they're treated like they're trash because a fan, unfortunately, in my opinion, really does do a weird, almost moral judgment of your playing style. They think if you play aggressively and take chances, you're confident and therefore you must know you're good and you must be good. But if you play defensively and conservative, you must be like a pussy who's scared to fight, basically, which, by the way, makes no sense at the level we're talking about. Maybe you could say that if it's like a 17-year-old kid, he's playing a random facing game, right? And you go, come on, mate, it's not the major final. Hurry up, will you? Stop baiting. We're talking about like players like Blame F and Shiro are fucking cracked at their roles, bro. They're definitely not. Yeah, they're definitely not scared, mate. They're just fucking awesome players, aren't they? They just have more of a defensive mindset. It's
a really good example you're giving with Ekinder, because literally there is someone on his team that had a bad period and now is one of the, I think, best anchors in the world in Yuri and Quesirado. I don't think a lot of people, I haven't seen a lot of people talk about how fucking sick Yuri is right now, but he's been phenomenal for the last half a year. But yeah, it is a good example, and I think it's, I mean, I don't want to turn this into Feed the Trolls. Obviously, we're not going to mock people for having bad opinions online, at least not too much, but it is a little bit weird. I still feel like there's part of me that actually turns a little bit, I become a little bit sad when that happens to some of the players, because I feel like a lot of them are underappreciated. And I think that's, again, a conversation we've had multiple times, especially me and you, is about valuing the players that are in the middle and valuing the players that are able to be put in difficult positions and still make the most out of it. Obviously, everyone loves a show, but you should be able to appreciate
Dude,
the
I'm
other
sure you
people on the
remember
team.
this. Last year, even when they were making those 6 finals in a
Yeah.
row, people were still saying he should be fired, mate. Like, he used to get the criticism when they're at the top. Like, it's
Yeah.
not just now when they've had the bad result. So people, I just feel like fans have always been gunning for this guy. They've always thought he sucked. Whereas, like, I will always defend a player like this, because when I watch him play, yes, he definitely has had some screamers on the biggest stages.
Yeah.
That's true. But I also think the underrated part was the reason why his numbers are so good is he was the guy carrying all the group stages to get you there. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many times I've seen him against worse hoppers where he's just better than them, mate. He just has like a really solid series. So I think people are just, like I said, cherry picking the bad moments.
Yeah.
I actually think he's an underrated player.
I think he calculates risk really well. He knows when he can bully the AWPer on the other side and when he should play a little bit more conservative, which is a good quality. It shows that he's aware of himself and the way that he can get away with certain things. The last player that I wanna...
So that thing you said as well is not an underrated detail, mate. There's a famous reputation Eastern Europeans have that they're very blunt and have a really spicy attitude. Actually, as far as I can see, mate, he seems like one of the chillest fucking tier 1 AWPers I've ever seen.
Yep.
If anything, I'd even go the other way. He seems a little bit morose when they lose sometimes. Like, he's a little bit down on himself. So I also feel like that's why I say, for me, I actually think Blade, I mean, if you actually listen to what Blade's saying, Blade's essentially told you for the last year and a half, yeah, I'd rather have Wonderful than Simple. And he means it. And I think one of the reasons why isn't that he thinks Wonderful's better than Simple if he gets
Easier
back
to work with.
He means there's one less big ego. Yeah, essentially, like, that's someone who's, I don't have to negotiate with this guy. He's just going to do what I want. So that's that's minus a problem, mate. That's not like, oh, he's not as much of it. That's minus a problem. Now maybe I'm just working with a rifler or I'm working with a Lexi boy. If you're someone like Blade, that's like a massive positive, even though to the fan, they'd rather gamble on the Simple and all the drama and the big carries and stuff. Maybe if you're Blade, you don't want that.
Yeah, maybe. And we're talking about someone that's worked with tens of players, maybe hundreds of players in his lifetime. So if he's saying it makes a difference, then it probably does make a difference. Another quick shout out I wanted to give to Bid, by the way, because I think obviously there's been a couple changes in the way that NAVI approached some things now that EME is not really that aggressive anymore. He's a little bit more lurky. That's actually opened up a little bit of space for Bid to take initiative, which I think is really cool. I was looking at specifically that StarLadder event. Bid had, I think, around 24-25% of the T side openings,
It's just crazy if you think about it, isn't it? That was nuts last year.
Which is mental, because he's the second one after MongolZ. Obviously, MongolZ is going to be the first one because he's just being sent heads first, but he's got more than ENCE, he's got more than w0nderful, obviously more than Alexi, but I think Bid is actually going to be, I really hope he's going to have one of those massive tier 1, like, big events until the end of the year, because I think he's getting to that point. I was just looking at him throughout this entire event and I was thinking, this guy just looks like he can win them games alone. And I feel like this is the scary part of Bid. And that's the reason I wanted to mention that quickly. Because if you go back a couple years, I think initially when Bid joined NAVI, even if you want to go back to 2021, 2020, I think one of his best qualities was the fact that he could, as a lurker, as an anchor on some maps, he could actually be your best player on certain occasions, right? And he could be a fucking terrifying guy to be against. I think now he is slowly turning into being, again, one of the best riflers in the world. If he had actually if he's ever left that group of people. But I think the fact that he's getting a little bit more initiative, the fact that they've got MongolZ on the team, that's opening a little bit of space, makes it a little bit easier for him. I'm still not sure how I feel about EME being a second lurk to Bid. I'm still a little bit conservative about that, even though I am in general a supporter of EME, but I'm not sure this is his forte, so to speak. But I feel like something that has happened on this team has opened up more space for Bid, and now he's really exciting to watch. So I'm hoping that NAVI as a unit is going to be able to, I guess, ride the wave of momentum on the back of that win and go into the next event, giving Bid the opportunity, because I still feel like he's one of those players that, as long as the team is functioning to a certain extent, he's just going to come in and he's going to be that extra boost. But he needs something out of his teammates. He needs something to be working and functioning in a proper way in order to play. But if he is playing well, it's wild. And the fact that he's initiating so many opening kills, for me, or to me, speaks confidence, and it speaks more freedom to you, because MongolZ is opening up space on the other side of the map. So now we're trying to play more type of a dynamic Counter-Strike, which I like.
Even last year, when Navi had both the major, I call it a fluke, but the little spike, and then they had the little down period. Then they
Okay.
did the big run from the summer onwards in the second
Yeah.
season. If you ever go and look, there was times when the numbers and the stats were all very close. Actually, all the rifle corps were all pretty much similar. Right, Wonderful was right there with them,
Yeah.
and it was basically, there's one team that got good, obviously. It was basically like Alexi B's the agile, so you take him out the equation. The rest, it's like the ultimate do it by committee team, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even though other people had the numbers, and JL was like winning all those clutches and was the MVP of the major, every analyst I talked to agreed with me on this, which is when you looked at that team, all of us thought those numbers aren't real. Like, those are a product of how good the system is, how everyone's playing off each other. At the time, it was even map specific. But the one player you looked at, and it wasn't just because of the NAVI period before, the obvious player that was the generational talent was B8. It is. Assuming we're not talking about IGLs, I think Alexi be out for a second.
Mm-hmm.
This was the one guy who actually looks like, even if everyone got shit in this team, you'd build around this guy, though. This is where you'd retreat to, and you'd put the extra players in. Because, so even when he had in the first season his dip, this is the player I'm willing to give way more fucking time to, way more space to, or maybe change up the role, like you're saying. Because I do think it is obvious when you watch his game, eye test wise, and I'm not talking about pure mechanic. By the way, mechanically, he's unbelievable as well. But he is another example of a player. There's another player, by the way, who definitely last year was playing a way more conservative and defensive game. His whole shit for me last year was like, you could see his intelligence in the game because he's so decisive. It's not that he plays cowardly and he doesn't ever go. He would play like conservative, and then when he like saw an opening where he thought like essentially he could sneak through or like make a flank or something, he would just do it, mate. He would just go and he'd pull off some super ballsy flank. And also another detail that you saw last year, and it still maintains to this day. I don't know why. It's something weird about his game, but he is just one of the best players in Counter-Strike on Inferno. He is so fucking good on that one map. And mate, let's think about this. Who the fuck bans Inferno? You're gonna play that a lot if you're in his team. Like, that and Mirage, I feel like everyone has to play nowadays. Like, this guy is fucking insane on that map. Like, he really could win you the game on his own on CT and T. He's like, that's one map. It's good. And I think part of the reason why is probably because Inferno is a lot about making the read of where the defense is rotated to, where there's a gap, or are they coming to my site if I'm playing in the pit, etc. Like, I think he actually does seem like he's a really cerebral player as well. And then obviously everyone knows about the headshot percentage, but he has pretty cracked mechanics as well. So I think this second season, part of what people have noticed is MongolZ is coming and giving them like impact. Like, you can see it definitely helps their T side. But I do think B8 is the best player in the team again. And that is why actually Navi's half decent now. I do have concerns about the ceiling, but I tell you what, it's not his fault. He does a great job, I think.
I will. I'm not sure if that is even supposed to be considered a hot take, because obviously a major MVP doesn't mean that you've been the best player on the team per se for a longer period of time. It's just one event. But I don't think there has been a time and point after Simple's departure that B8 has not been the best player on Navi. I really don't.
No, I would say he was the best of all time. Yeah, I think it's fair.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of it just comes down to the fact that he just has the decision making of a veteran, and he's playing with a lot of conviction. Like, you can just see that this is the guy that's probably not going to get removed unless Falcons come in with 10 mil and they're like, well, we want him. Obviously, I'm exaggerating with the money part.
Even though, yeah, people are going to say because they have the connection, they're both Ukrainian. That no, I also feel like B8 is the player where he just seems to completely sync with how Blade plays the game. Like, if you want an old school analogy, he must be like the Paul Scholes to the Alex Ferguson of, like, football.
Okay.
Like, that's just his player, bro. Like, does like his style and acts it the way he wants. You don't like I say, if I was doing my player review and I'm Blade, this guy's almost never getting below like a fucking B, mate.
Right.
So he would be getting really good grades. Yeah.
Okay, I like the reference. As a Man United fan, that took me back to the last time when we actually won 2 games in a row in the Premier League. Now this is like
and think about I built into the analogy. People were always telling you it was other players with a better player, well, be the goal scorer or something. And I used to think, like, who do you think passes the ball to the goal scorer, mate? It's this guy. He runs the whole team. He's the end. By the way, same concept. He's the engine of the team.
You know what
this team be without B8? You know.
I think the way to evaluate on that is when you listen to what other players have to say about that. Because if you ask other people about Navi, I don't think there's a single player in a top 10 or top 20 team in the world that wouldn't tell you that B8 is a monster and they don't like playing against him. It's the same with Scholes back in the days, if we're continuing that analogy, where guys from Barcelona, guys from Real Madrid, and that was the Barcelona that was just playing the tiki-taka. They were doing whatever they wanted. Everyone will tell you that Scholes is one of the best midfielders in the world, right? So it is a great analogy. But with Navi,
it's also why, put it this way, here's a detail, if you think about it contextually, that gives mad props to B8. You know, in the first season of this year, when Falcons, everyone knew they're going to make those moves, so they didn't get Jim Pat, and everyone knew MongolZ was coming, and they already had Nico. Everyone said they should just sign B8. That was when he was playing badly, mate. That was like his
Yeah.
downtime. Even in his downtime, everyone was like, essentially, the team with unlimited money who could buy anyone should just buy this guy and he'll complete their team. I think everyone agrees with that. Like, I think all of us thought if you did that, by the way, he'd immediately come up with his funk. He'd be awesome. He'd do all these things that you don't get in a team. I actually think right now, by the way, players like Bit are probably the players in the lowest, in the highest demand, but the lowest supply. Like, there's very few really cerebral anchor type, lurky type players that fucking like. You couldn't order a player that's from a factory, mate. They don't make them.
Yeah, absolutely don't. I agree. And it's going to be interesting to see how Navi do at EPL. They're going to have like 2 weeks, I think, 3 weeks until that. Well, 2 weeks until EPL starts. I don't want to put on the pink goggles after StarLadder, because obviously they didn't play against teams that are on their level and are supposed to be on their level. But I am hopeful to see how they do in EPL. I hope there's going to be a little bit of optimism around that team after it. Obviously, a lot of it resolves around MongolZ and IMA as well, leveling up their game, because they've been a little bit all over the place with MongolZ. I guess you can find more excuses than with IMA, but we are going to move towards FISSURE Playground, which was the other event that was going simultaneously with StarLadder that we've been talking about. And there's a couple interesting storylines. Obviously, we're going to leave the who won the event one for last. One thing that I wanna bring up to your attention is I'm just gonna put it out bluntly. I'm gonna ask you a question and I'm gonna see what you think about it, because this is something that I discussed with King T like 2 weeks ago, and it was a really fun story where right before the start of FISSURE, we were having a chat about 3D Max, and we said we like 3D Max, but they are literally the type of team that could beat MongolZ and then lose to everybody else. So what happened here? 3D Max beat the MongolZ in round 1, and then they lose to FaZe, they lose to Gamer Legion, and then shockingly, that was the best of them all, that was the best seller, they lose to VP, which I don't think anyone does at this point, but they did. So what do you think about 3D Max? What do you make out of the fact that they can beat one of the best teams in the world, but then lose against a couple dead teams as well?
The problem that they have in their team is, I'll actually draw the analogy to like a team like a B8. One thing I like about this team is they've kept the same core for quite a while now, while trying to gradually do like minimal upgrades, you know, and then they have got a core identity of how they play. In fact, actually, this is even probably to Maui take, but I agree with them after watching it. It's actually a like slightly underrated tactical team. They do look like they have a whole playbook and everyone knows what their role is and what to do within it. The obvious problem is this: they have 2 areas that they are weak in. They don't have crazy firepower. Like, they're not one of these international squads where they picked up all the hot FPL players. They're working with just French players, and they have to get a lot out of people like a Maka if they have a good performance.
Okay.
Like, they don't have like super carries, and they don't have like a massively high skill level for me. So one is they can't play teams where superstar players blow you out the server. I think they have a hard time matching up in that sense. And then the other, so actually that's why I think MongolZ even worked, because I do think MongolZ is actually a team where the firepower is a little bit more concentrated. It's not like the team where it's all evenly distributed. And then also, to me, the other problem you have in 3D Max, because by the way, I actually bet on them to win that game over MongolZ, and I won. And one of the reasons I bet was because on paper, yeah, MongolZ supposed to beat you all day long. But the other thing about 3D Max is they are one of the teams where you can literally tell if they have a chance purely from the veto. Bro, they don't have a big map pool, but if they can get you onto just 2, Nuke, bit of Inferno, these are the maps they have a chance of. Do you get a series where you get 2 of those maps? They got a chance. They got a chance. As long as the other team doesn't have Ziwu or Donk or something crazy that's going to have. So essentially, this team for me is like, I wouldn't even call them a gatekeeper, because the problem with that is like teams can beat them or worse. I think they're a team where it just shows like, can you like outfrag them? Can you actually match them tactically? Are you as good on their maps as they are on their maps? Because they definitely have some upset potential. Like, to me, they're more, I would describe them as they're a team that keeps like top 10 teams honest. If you're a lower top 10 team, funny enough, that's why actually I would give somewhat props to VP for beating them. That's the sort of team that they can normally catch out. They can normally get a team like that.
Yeah, I think it's actually an upset that Virtus.pro beat 3D Max under those circumstances. I do agree with you. I feel like they're like a gatekeeper without a gate. It's like just a gate frame, you know? You know it's there. It's sometimes the doors are closed. More often than not, they're open. But it is weird, because I think they are one of those teams that are trying to have a unique identity to the game, a unique approach to the game. They are trying to resolve stuff. As you said, they've been holding on to the same core of players, and obviously there could be a whole lot of different reasons. Probably the biggest one, the fact that the talent pool in France, I don't think is that big for them to bring in a lot of other guys. Maybe you can try and get Naito out of ENCE, but does he really want to leave ENCE to come in and play with the Frenchman? That's an entirely different question. But outside of Naito, and obviously we're not counting Apex and Zywoo, is there really another French player that you're looking at and saying, well, this guy is sticking out like a sore tongue that would upgrade this team? I don't feel like there is. And I mean, you could someone wild could go out and say, well, now that Kersey's leaving Gamer Legion, he had those couple nice best of threes. It's quite obvious that he wasn't cut for this level. So, which, by the way, I feel really ashamed of, because I did have, I was hoping he was gonna play well, and things just didn't work out. But I think 3D Max are, I still am hopeful that they will be able to find some level of consistency now that Gravity is an in-game leader, and I said that to T last time we spoke. I feel like the fact that you're giving the IGL reins to the youngest guy on the team means that you clearly identify an issue, and you want to see if a different approach to the game and a different maybe way of, I guess, viewing the game both tactically and maybe structurally, and maybe how the communication should be within the team, is a clear signal that those guys realize this should be addressed. And this is an attempt to fix it. You are given the reins to the newest guy on the team and the youngest guy on the team, who's supposed to have a I guess more modern approach in view for the game. Also is going to be a big test for Maka, because now he's not the in-game leader, he's just an AWPer, so he has to be a little bit better individually, which I think he was against the MongolZ. After that, maybe not as much, but it will be interesting to see if he can stand up to the task. We already mentioned him, but VP, what do you think about Toro? What do you think about the VP situation right now?
But this way, this is what's tough. Is in theory, I like the additions they've made. I just don't necessarily like them for those roles as much. Like, mainly the Perfecto one, I think is a nightmare, because I do think he still can come back to be a really good player. I just don't know if he's good IGL material. It'll take me a while before I'm able to see that, and I don't even know if he's got the tools to work with in the actual squad right now. The Toro guy looks actually good. He actually looks like a good addition. The problem is, though, he's not like so good that he makes them a game winner. So I still think like one problem they have in this team is they don't get the best out of the players they've got in this squad, mate. Like, for me, in an ideal world, if you could make this squad work the way on paper it looks like it should, Flit would be the best player. You'd probably have like Flame and Toro next. Then you'd go like that team would start to make sense then, mate. Then everyone would sort of move into their role. I think Icy, by the way, is actually the #1 person on that team that just hasn't made it. Like, I thought he was actually, I thought he looked pretty promising on Cloud9 when they had that roster going.
Yeah.
He's there when he came to VP. I don't know if it's how they use him. I don't know if it's all the different IGLs, but it's never worked for me. Like, he's always looked very average to me. And actually, if you play against better teams, he's the player I usually will bank on to not be that good. So for me, it's mainly the AWPer. I actually think the addition of the Toro guy, I didn't know much about him, but it seems like a good pickup. That actually seems like that was quite a shrewd signing. It looks good.
You know what's the one interesting thing? Toro wasn't even a top 2 player on VP Prodigy, on the VP Academy, in terms of statistics. Yeah, it was I mean, the main reason was, that's an interesting one. They actually did beat Liquid in the qualifier for StarLadder.
Oh, they were the ones in this tournament earlier this year, right?
Yes, exactly. So they beat Liquid, and then the main talking points were Bist, who's the AWPer of the team, obviously couldn't get promoted to replace Icy, and Aqua RS, that I thought was gonna get promoted because he was the in-game leader, and he's putting out really good numbers for an IGL. And then Toro gets promoted, who was, I would argue, like the 4th best player on the team maybe, and he was in tier 2 Counter-Strike. Well, not even tier 2, tier 3 Counter-Strike. I want to say unremarkable. Wasn't like he's one of those prospects that you just spot out and say, I can definitely see just from watching a couple games of this guy that he's tier 1 material. And then he comes in, and that train game against 3D Max, I think, has left a bit of a mark in my brain. Where he went 25-14 and pretty much single-handedly won them the game. But it is weird that he's already playing that well on this team. I think it's actually, in a weird way, I think it's a bit of an insult towards some of the other rifles, because he's not a star player. He's not supposed to be a star player. He's a supportive element. He's more of an anchor type of guy. So I think if you're looking at Fame and Flit, I feel like the addition of Toro, when Perfecto is already on the team, and you've got Icy, who's a really again, not the exciting type of AWPer. He's a lot more supportive. I think that actually puts a little bit more pressure on Fame and Flit to deliver, and I think it's a little bit worse for them that their numbers are not going up, because now those are the guys that are going to be put in a lot of the positions where they need to take the initiative. It's nice if they allow Toro to have a little bit of that. Maybe he turns out to be one of the best mechanical players that have come out of I guess Academy Counter-Strike, but we can't really know that for now, can we? So we're going to be looking at Fame and Flit, and as of right now, I feel like it's been weird. And same as you, I am not sure about the Perfecto IGL move. I just want to say, I found it incredibly hilarious when he came out and said, well, Blade won me as an IGL a couple years ago. I thought that was
especially because people forget. Yeah, he's the one who picked fucking Electronic, mate. Like, you could argue that's not necessarily a seal of approval. Who knows?
Yeah, that was... That was a fun one. But Virtus Pro, not too much to say there. I was just wondering what you think
No,
initially.
I think that's a pretty underwhelming squad, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah, it's
You know.
and it's kind of like beating a dead horse because people have been talking about them for many months and things are not really changing to
But
a
this way,
drastic extent.
some of these teams, if they get the VRS points, you could see them at the major. But this would be like the team that would probably like go out at stage 2 or something. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They'd like go 2-2 and then lose the last game and then go out. Another thing about this squad as well. This is why I hated the pickup the way they did it, because I have a massive problem with teams where on paper it's like, where are you going to get the firepower from? Because on paper, if you have Flit and you have Fame and icy players, that should be enough. But they don't ever do it. Like, they never all play well at the same time. It seems like Fame and Flit are just like, Flit's like, I've got CT side, I've got T side. It's like, why the fuck is this? That's not what star players do. You're supposed to be like a top talent. So the issue is, I do think they have like a mechanical ceiling on this team, and stylistically they're trash. Like, you know what? As much as everyone might have flamed Jame, mate, his era of VP was still way better than Electronics, and then I don't even know what this new one is. Like, it's not much. I don't know where do you put your hope, you know?
Yeah, I think tactically maybe the issue is a lot bigger because mechanically I still don't want to buy the fact that Fame and Flit are not good players. I don't want to. I literally just don't want to believe
Well,
that
that's
those.
my point. The two tie in though, don't they? Like,
Yeah.
something's not enabling them, mate. Like,
Yeah.
but here's the weird thing. Like I just said, if you ever watch any time he was in VP CT sides, Flit shoots people in the head when they come, mate. He's clearly got mechanical skill, but something's kept him in the last few years down under Jame and then Electronic. Something's kept his level down. There's something like it's not enabling it. So I know what you mean. Like, I wouldn't take that player and chuck him on the rubbish bin.
Yeah.
I would try and figure out, like, reverse engineer a game that enhances his strengths.
Maybe just send him over to Jame in PARIVISION. Maybe that fixes him. Or send him over to Boomich on Bedboom. We never know what could happen there. But
sadly, that's also the move. This is one of those times I wish I was more of an insider in the Russian scene, mate. I don't know what it is that they don't like about Boomich, because for some reason in the Russian scene, they don't ever seem to consider him as a change mate. Like, I'm not joking. I do think from that Cloud9 period onwards, he's sort of earned a shot at the bigger teams again. VP, definitely. By the way, I might even go crazy and chuck him in at Spirit, mate. I think this guy's actually, like, pretty interesting leader. True, he's definitely more the loose style, but I thought he looked fucking dope for some of the things he was doing in that Cloud9. I remember he had the Cloud9 that didn't have an AWPer, and he was AWPing sometime with Perfecto.
Yeah.
Go fucking top 8 in a major, bro. Like, that was no joke. Like, this guy actually seems like he has chops, but for some reason, they don't even seem to consider him. You know how in the Western scene, we all kept saying for all teams after his time at G2, why don't they sign Huxley? To me, he's the obvious same signing over in their region. It's like, if you need an IGL, try Boomich out, mate. But for some reason, it doesn't seem like they care. They have a different perspective on it. I don't know what it is. I don't get it, mate.
I actually think, in my perspective, I would say that Boomich is even a safer bet than Hooks he was after G2. I really do believe so. I agree with you. I completely agree with you. I feel like Boomich is one of those in-game leaders that even if you were to announce a change between him and Chopper, even if Chopper gets replaced on Spirit by Boomich, I wouldn't be standing there and saying, why the hell have you done that? I would stand there and say, well, it's probably a little bit unjustified. It's probably unfair for Chopper. Yeah, it's a big gamble, but I can see the logic. I can see the method to the madness. Maybe stylistically it doesn't work, but the fact that this guy had a couple weird things happening in his personal life doesn't change the fact that he was leading the probably one of the best, if not the best Navi team ever, right? The best iteration of Navi. He was still the in-game leader of that team. So
also, by the way, if no one's ever seen him in real life, look it up now. You might have seen him like last year. No, now he has lost all the weight, bro. He's actually legit. This guy, for real, I think changed his game and his life. He looks like he's turned it all around. He looks actually really good now, mate.
My favorite thing about Boomich is, by the way, the fact that he's an incredibly funny guy. He's really outgoing and he's really nice. He was one of the people, by the way, during FISSURE, the first FISSURE, that even after 1 a.m., 2 a.m. days was coming down to the media room and he was like, okay, who wants to do an interview? And he was doing all the interviews and he was staying there. He was really positive. Boomich is just a really nice fella. I really like Boomich. Okay, so we're moving forward. Now we've got the FaZe Liquid type of fiasco, and the reason I'm putting it out as a FaZe Liquid is obviously because Twistzz is going to be leaving Liquid. He's going back to FaZe. First thing is that I was thinking about a little bit a while ago. Is there anyone that FaZe could remove that makes sense? Who do FaZe remove in order to free up space for Twistzz? That is my main issue. And the reason that's my main issue, first of all, you're not touching the IGL. I hope you're not touching the IGL. Second of all, you've got Rain, you've got Jacob, you've got Frozen. Twistzz, I don't think you're removing Frozen. Jacob, you just signed 1 month ago. Do you want to kick Rain?
I mean, it's implied that's the only one left, right? That's people are using that logic because people. Here's the problem I think you have. This reminds me of what's going on in Spirit. In Spirit, if you notice, I have a different perspective, even to how what my own perspective was on building teams from like 4 or 5 years ago. If you notice, I'm using more of like a sports approach. I look at two things. One, what are the actual economic status of the team? Like, I don't judge people as harshly, by the way. If you're like a beta and an IP, like maybe you can't get the top players, mate. It's really fucking hard. Like, you don't have the mega buyouts, you don't have the mega salaries. That would be like telling Aston Villa, just build a team like fucking Liverpool's. Like, how could they? They haven't got the fucking money and the players wouldn't join. Like, it wouldn't matter if you told that player to join. But then the other factor as well is I do think that you have to be ruthless if you build squads. So in Spirit, right, what everyone does is they go, well, the reason it has to be Zontics that today joins for is because they only just signed Sway. That's not the way sports works, boys. You can join a team and get them. Look at fucking Rashford. You just get put straight on the bench, mate. If they can bring you on thinking you're going to be good, it doesn't work the way you wanted so far. So for now, you're going to the bench. So in Spirit, if they told me, actually, we're going to take Sway out. I know he was only here a couple of events, and even won a few, but we're going to put Taneer instead of Svein, and later on the year, Zontics is back. Like, I wouldn't blame them if they did that. Those are all players they have the choice to build the squad of. So I do think you could bench the Jacob guy. I don't get what this whole thing of like, but he only just joined. Yeah, first of all, he wasn't very good. And secondly, he never should have joined in the first place. Like, this isn't a top player. He wasn't even hyped as a fucking player in the scene. So I don't know why Jacob can't possibly be benched, because I do feel like I would personally do the Jacob move. I'll just say, right, you bench for now. Let's see how it works. By the way, you can also bring him back in 2 months if you prefer him over Rain. But the difference is, I do think if you look like a mixture of like social and like where they are in their careers, I think it's just like the Rain one is an easier cut, even though fans might not like it. If they think it'll make your team better, and I'm pretty sure people think Twistzz is better than Rain, they'll accept it, in my opinion, especially if you then start winning. So I think that's just the like politically expedient one. But I have to say, I would have given one last roll of the dice for the rest of the season. I would have just benched Jacob for now and just gone, look, we're bringing Twistzz in now. Rain's going to play out this one last season. If it works, okay. If not, you can come in and maybe you can have Rain's spot or something like that, you know, because what I don't get is, to me, Jacob's not some super talent. He's just an all right player. He's not bad. He's just an all right player, though.
The thing is, I feel like my main issue with this is the moral compass just activating and being like, well, why do you bring the guy in the first place if you knew that there was deeper problems within that team that wouldn't be fixed by him just coming in 1-for-1 for Elise? Surely they didn't expect Jacob to come in and be better than Elise as an individual or be the same as him.
That's the problem. No one really knows. Like, unfortunately, this move mixed with getting Twistzz really does make it look like, look, you know that rumor that came out all those months ago? I think it was an Overdrive one. That was that like Elise and Twistzz are just going to swap teams, basically. Yeah. Like, Elise is going to go back to Liquid and Fate Twistzz. If you remember, that was months ago now, mate. That wasn't like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Right? There could be a world where, first of all, both parts of that deal might be real. Maybe Elise is going to go to Liquid, so everyone thinks. But let's say it's not. But let's say the Twistzz part was always real. It could be like, I actually suspect, by the way, it is like that in Spirit. I think it's the same move, bro. I think in Spirit, the plan originally was get Taneer. That was the obvious one they wanted, and they wanted to probably upgrade, at the time, probably like fucking Zontics and get a different player and get more firepower and an aggressive player with the more late-round impact on T-side, all the jazz that everyone loves about today. But I reckon they some sort of a hitch in the deal, and so in the meantime, they didn't know if they were going to get him. By the way, analogy here, you could do Liverpool when they got Ekatike. They got Ekatike thinking they're not getting Isaac, and then they got both at the end. But in this analogy, you actually get the Zway guy going, well, he's like a decent up-and-coming player. Maybe he can be good. He had a decent major with Namiga, you know. Then you go, what? We can get Taneer as well. Fuck, sign him. Again, if you're the org, you don't ever lose. You can choose which piece to come in and out. It's the player that it sucks for. But yeah, unfortunately, I feel like you did the short-term move, but then your long-term move also came in, and you're like, well, there's no point not doing it. And so, yeah, I agree. It is really awkward. Like, that conversation is bullshit if you're Jacob. Like, there's no possible way you can tell him, by the way, you're benched. Even if it's for Twistzz or because we really, you can't tell him because we really wanted him. Then, yeah, why did you sign me then? But I'll also spin it the other way, which is, if he does get benched, he still did, out of nowhere, essentially wake up one day like he had a fucking genie, get to join FaZe clan, play actually some lands, and it's up to him if he performed then. Look, I wouldn't judge someone for not being that good after a couple of lands, true. But that's also my issue here is, like I say, my issue is he was never hyped before. If he'd have been really, really good elsewhere, a la the Wrinkle example we gave in the past, I'll give you more time. Like, I don't know what ceiling people want from Jacob. What do they think he's going to do? Also, why does he have to be in FaZe clan? I don't get that part. Why can he only be in Apogee, BetClick, or FaZe clan? Why is there not a team in the middle? You know, why can't he be on OG? What am I missing? You know?
Yeah, I think there's a fair point to be made there. I had the chance to, because I was, again, same as you, interested to see what the reputation was like, because obviously I've casted the guy for a while, and I know he was one of the more talented rifles in tier 2 Counter-Strike, but I was like, I'm gonna do a little bit of investigation work here and talk to some of the Polish guys, right? Because they know their own
Okay.
people. One of the main things that I was told about Jacob was the fact that he is mechanically one of the best players that they've ever seen, which is a good thing that, you know, your own countrymen are saying about you. Obviously, it could be because they are your countrymen as well. But also the fact that he's incredibly shy and incredibly introverted. So for me, I am trying to find the logic of you picking up in a team that is supposedly struggling a little bit with the atmosphere. A young guy that's just going to be there. He's going to be quiet. And if there is issues, he's going to sing that in, right? He's going to sing into those issues. That's going to affect his game, supposedly, even though he's got star player positions, which a lot of people just try and make a connection with the fact that you're going to be an extroverted, outgoing person. Yep. It doesn't quite work like that all the time. There is really good star players that are introverted people and that are having issues when the team's atmosphere is not the greatest. And especially when you're a younger guy, it's a little bit difficult to just come in and smash it out the bat. But I do agree with you. I feel like for especially those types of people that are not just coming in like a MongolZ that apparently is just going to step on the big stage and he's going to say, I don't give a damn about where I'm playing. I'm still going to go in and I'm going to destroy those guys. If you don't have that attitude, it could be better for you to go through a tier 1.5 team first, play a couple of those events, and then make a steady transition. It doesn't mean that Jacob doesn't have the ceiling to play tier 1 Counter-Strike. Maybe it means that he just needs a little bit of time buffer in order to get the experience and just needs a slower journey to get there, right? And I think in general, I feel like I would dislike this move from FaZe, not because it doesn't make sense for them. Because at this point, if you lay the cards, I would say bench Jacob as well and get Twistzz to play for him. The reason I wouldn't like this move is because I feel like it actually messes up with a young player's career in a way.
That's why, though, I also think when you do moves, you have to look. It's actually my style I patented in CS. When I do a roster move, I try to look at it from each party's perspective. Should the team that let the guy go, let him go or kick him? Should the team sign him or get a player like him? Should the player make that move himself? Is that the right? Like, I'll give you a joke example. I actually think if you're FaZe, it is better if you could get Twistzz instead of Jacob. The joke is, I think for Twistzz, actually, that's a worse team of players you join. I think Liquid was a better squad that was closer to winning the major than FaZe is right now. So I would say on Twistz's side, it's maybe more of a weird move. So in this particular case, yeah, obviously it feels really unfair for you, Jacob. But I also think the fact that you have different expectations, like for him, he's not trying to win the major, mate. That was never on the table. Like now's the only time he could even dream of that, like because he could potentially be at the major and then you have players who have won the major. But before that, like winning tier 1 tournaments isn't what this guy's expectation level is. But that is FaZe Clan's though. That's why FaZe is in such a bad spot, mate. I actually think for real, the PR move they did with Simple has actually backfired. It was working so well at that major. People, let's be real, FaZe fans even did forgive that quarterfinal. They were even willing to go, look, he hasn't been around for a while. That was a big stage match. MongolZ ended up going to the final. We'll even forget that actually, yes, that was probably the shittest match on camera he's ever played. Like literally missing like sitters right in front of him. But the hype of like, if he ever got good again, though, we could win the fucking everything. That's what FaZe fans want. So my other problem with the Jacob angle is, like I said, I didn't even say he's terrible, mate. He's just an average player at tier 1 for me. And so the issue is, he doesn't make you win the major. And he isn't some like carry super, and he's not flashy. It's not like you say he hasn't got a massive personality. I think it's just hard to sell that because if his expectations surely aren't the same as FaZe Clan, especially by the way people like Carrigan. If you're playing at this point in time, in my opinion, if you're Carrigan, you're not playing to just be in the mix. You're not playing to make like, oh, cool, made a semi. You're playing to win trophies, mate. You're trying to win shit on the way out the door. This is like, put it this way, when I like watching tennis, the only reason Djokovic plays quite clearly right now is to win the Grand Slams. Right. I don't even think he cares about the ATP Masters tournaments, mate. Like, I think he only plays to try and add to that Grand Slam count. And that's why actually you can see he isn't fucking like, yeah, pretty good match in the semis. He's bombed out. They can't win anymore. Like that kills him because that's all he plays. I think that's why Carrigan, by the way, and in theory, Rain's supposed to be at this point in their careers. If you still play, you play to try and have the players around you to win, like have a successful end to your career. You're not just trying to just play for a check. Like these guys could fuck off to other teams. They could just retire. They could be caught. They could do whatever they wanted at this point. I think they play to win.
Yeah, I think they are. I hope they were. And I feel like it's a little bit of a sour taste, the fact that they were able to make the quarterfinals with Simple, and the fact that they They go back to Brokey. After that, it just raises expectations because you're thinking, well, now that they've played quarterfinals, we're expecting them to be even better after they've made a decision and they're on an upward trajectory. And now they're in a weird spot where they can't even make it out of groups. And they start 2-0, they go out. And FaZe has always been that type of a team to start 0-2 and then go through 3-2. They've never been the type of team to start 2-0 and then not be able to win a single best of 3 in a high stakes matchup against teams that probably they should be beating a lot of the time. So that was a little bit underwhelming, but it will be interesting to see what Twistzz does. I actually do like the move for Twistzz. I feel like Liquid as a team was just and still is a team that just needs some type of a change. I'm not sure if one change is going to cut it. I don't think one change is going to cut it because at this point there's going to be questions asked about Chewy. There's going to be questions asked about the individual form of Nerds and maybe his attitude at times. There's going to be a lot of things. Ultimate for me is the obvious one. So I can't really blame Twistzz for trying to dodge all of that and actually find a better spot for his career in the future. But I do agree with you in terms of FaZe just making a couple really weird decisions and now not really being in a spot where you can even say that those guys are competing for the trophies. It's more like we're just going to be happy if they make playoffs and we're going to say it's exciting.
My problem with that is where you set that up makes sense from the position of Twistzz individually if you're only thinking about himself.
Yeah.
My problem with this is, right, that's like him going, oh, I'm not staying in this room. Look, the walls are all covered in shit and there's all like trash on the floor. Yeah, but you shit on the walls and you put all the trash on the floor. Like, how dare you say that? Like, okay, that's my problem. Oh, it's Liquid not good enough. You ruined it, mate. What, you don't get to just fucking go now. You're the one who did all this shit.
Okay, but isn't it sometimes better? Isn't it sometimes better for you to leave? You're just like, well, I tried.
That's why he never should have been an IGL, and he never should.
It's like a really bad car mechanic. You know, it's like being a bad car mechanic. You're like, well, I've been working on this car for 3 weeks. I've been trying to change one tire, and I can't change one tire for 3 weeks. Let me just take my leave and let someone else come, and they're gonna hire a better guy than me, and he's gonna fix all of that because I am making it worse. Yeah, but here's the thing I'm saying.
My question is this, and we can't know this, sadly.
Okay.
Did Twistzz actually learn the lesson? Or was his lesson just, oh, the team sucks now, so I'm going? By the way, he did that to FaZe. He did that to a bunch of squads. He did that to the super team of Liquid. He did that. By the way, I've never seen, even privately behind the scenes, him ever talk against people like the Ultimate Move and stuff. He seemed fine with all the... He either chose these moves, was in favour of them, approved them, or he didn't have any issue with them. So if you do all these moves, what I would want to, a minimum, know is that you do acknowledge you fucked up in Liquid. If you can acknowledge that, then you can move on. If your whole shit was like, the team sucks now, you're part of the reason why, bro. You're part of how that happened.
I still remember, by the way, I was listening to an episode of, I think it was Talking Counter right after Ultimate got picked up last year. And Twistzz was the guest, and his exact words were that he needed like 30 minutes on a call with Ultimate to realize that he's got the potential to be a tier 1 player and that he wants him on the team. And he was like, I'm really confident that I can make the difference between average players and really good players and blah blah blah. So he did take accountability, and he was saying I was the main person, and then obviously Daps was the coach, and he was like, yeah, we had the conversation together, we chose him, we trust him, we think he's really good, and I evaluated on him personally. So I agree with you. I feel like there should be a little bit of accountability, but at the end of the day, as you pointed out, what does that... It changes a little bit about our perception of who he is as a person. It doesn't really change the situation and the fact that it's all messed up. But I do agree with you that to some extent, it would be nice to know that he is growing as a player and as a person, and he realizes, okay, I had my opportunity, I messed up, I wasn't cut for it. Can I write a new chapter now that I'm a little bit more self-aware, and maybe I'm willing to look for the issues within myself as well?
Okay.
Yeah, that's I actually didn't think about that before. I think I'm not used to seeing players take accountability for those things. So it's an interesting angle to actually look at. But now that we've talked enough about that, I feel like Liquid, I don't even want to get into Liquid right now. I just want to let it happen. I want to see what happens with the roster. Maybe Elias joins, maybe he doesn't, maybe they make more changes. We'll see what's gonna happen there. If indeed Twistzz was one of the issues of this team, maybe they will be able to change things up and the atmosphere is going to be a little bit better in the future. We can't really know. So the other things that I want to discuss, obviously we're narrowing down the teams that are worth talking about when it comes down to this event as of right now, but I'm just gonna shoot straight. Are you disappointed that neither G2 or MongolZ won FISSURE? Do you think this should be a disappointment for either one of those teams? And if so, which one and why?
The easy one's MongolZ, mate.
Okay.
Like MongolZ on paper, when that final is set, FURIA versus MongolZ, you're supposed to win that one, mate. Like, in fact, I even think that in the real match, they weren't that far off. If they win that first map, which is right there, they have the massive T side. I think they win that. I think they win 3-1 instead of losing 3-2. Like, I think that was right there, the series. I always thought if you looked at the Veto, it was always going to be a back and forth series. But I do think MongolZ is the better squad overall. Maybe, here's the thing, I'd maybe give the firepower edge to FURIA, but actually that's never been an issue on Mongol's side. Mongol's style of play, I actually also like the kind of like T-side style they have. So I think actually it works pretty well. It just, look, it does rely on things like Senzu has to be really good. I've said it on Twitter, if you saw, I never know what people say. I do think 910 is one of the most overrated players in all of World Counter-Strike, though. Like, that guy for me is not a star AWPer. He's
Elaborate,
an AWPer,
please.
but I mean, first of all, numbers-wise, he's not even anywhere close, mate. He's a fucking joke. And then secondly, in the survey, he doesn't check out with the eye test. Like, he first of all just... the joke is, he is everything every fucker tells me w0nderful is, except w0nderful gets the blame for it and is a much better player. Like, he does, like, a mixture of just basic bitch spots over and over and over again, and then doesn't hit the shots. And then also, he'll randomly just, like, press W and just do a randy ass move and just like fucking frag too. He's not a bad player, but he's mega inconsistent. He's mega inconsistent. Like, you never know when this guy's gonna have a good series. I've also seen way too many semis and finals on LAN where he's the player that chokes. He just looks like he got way worse. That's why I think he is who people say w0nderful is. I just think w0nderful's better than that. So that's an issue for me, because who was his counterpoint in this final? Molodoi, who completely outshined him to a degree that was pathetic. Like, you could never have won in that scenario. So I needed a little bit more from him. But aside from that, I actually think in general they're a pretty good team. So I think the Mongols one was the under. And also, if you've made the major final, you've won EWC, you go and look at this LAN. Being as it wasn't like the G2 squad that you were playing here, you're just playing FURIA, who hasn't even won a trophy ever. This is where you just win another trophy. And now we're having a conversation about, is MongolZ actually like, can they be the second best or third best? Can they be better than Vitality? That would be a cool convo, right? Because they beat Vitality a few times. So I feel like this LAN actually, low key, they had a bit of the NAVI at Star Series thing, which is if you lose, it doesn't matter that you came second, you're going to get some shit for it, mate. People are going to go, that's maybe actually a black mark. For a normal team, coming second's good. Yeah, like if you had, by the way, have been Liquid and come second here, that'd be fucking dope. Yeah, that'd be a good result. I think for MongolZ, it was a bad result, unfortunately. I think they didn't get the job done. It was right there in front of them to take.
I feel like the narrative for me is really difficult to build when it comes down to the MongolZ, because at the start it was, those guys are not going to be able to beat the best teams in the world, but those guys are going to be gatekeepers and they're going to beat anyone below, right? So they're going to get past group stages and then they will choke in playoffs, but then slowly they started getting better and better. They get more experience, they win the occasional game in playoffs, and then occasionally they started beating the best teams in the world as well. So the conversation shifts from, are they going to be able to perform in playoffs, to, are they going to win the final or the semi-final against the best? It just becomes an even playground, right? Obviously, you're not talking that much about the mental of the entire team, but maybe about the mental of some players, as you pointed out, 910, which, by the way, I completely agree. I feel like w0nderful is a much more complete player, although I do like 910 as an AWPer, but inconsistency individually has been a bit of a thing for some of those guys. I mean, Senzu is the other big one, who's we know how high the ceiling is, but sometimes in big games he just goes missing. And when I say big games, I mean just grand finals and semifinals and important maps, but he is a phenomenal player. I think my main question when it comes down to the MongolZ now is, can those guys win when they are really the big favorite? When they really are supposed to have that status of a top 3 team, right? Because mentally is a lot different. Mentally, when you're, let's say, the 10th best team in the world and you need to play against the number 15 on the number 20 on the number 25, the pressure isn't as big for you to win a group stage game against those guys. But then you go into the playoffs, and for the first time, I feel like for the MongolZ, they go into a grand final of an event of this scale. They're playing against another team that is hot, that they're not playing against Liquid, for example, because as you said, for Liquid, it would have been a good result. But if you're looking at this final, the MongolZ are the favorites against FURIA. They would have been the favorites against Liquid. But Liquid are in a much worse state than FURIA is. So now you're playing against the dangerous team, even though you still are the favorite, and you just crumble. And as you said, they probably could have won that game. They probably should have won that game. But then you're looking at the firepower shortage, and you're thinking, well, is really the difference between 910 and MongolZ that big? Is really the difference between some of the other individuals and the individuals of FURIA that big? I think the answer might actually be yes, in favor of FURIA.
I think so.
But the main thing is, can those guys play when they're supposed to win?
People don't give credit to that aspect of FURIA, because people's whole narrative was like, can you Kindar be good again? What are you doing with this Kazakhstani AWPer? Why? Wow, you're not Brazilian. People missed that, like, the second that team got good, the mechanical level is legit fucking that team, mate. Like, that is just, remember, like, on paper, the 4th best player is what, like, Kindar or something, or fucking Yuri, or like, mate, that is a fucking cracked out team. Like, that part I have no, so that's why I also think MongolZ sort of got a little bit exposed in this one. They got outshot as well. Yeah.
Yeah, they absolutely did, and I think it's weird because I don't think that makes them lesser of a team. I feel like it's probably part of the learning process. It is a little bit weird in my opinion. It's not that big of a disappointment, but it is a proof that they can't be considered a top 2 team yet. Because if you are looking at this grand final, maybe you're looking at, I don't know, Vitality playing against Furia. I would still put my money on Vitality winning this grand final against Furia, no matter the firepower, no matter anything. And I am a big supporter of Furia, but I feel like if you're the MongolZ, you probably just are gaining experience, and it's inevitable for you to go through those moments. So I wouldn't say it's a massive disappointment, but same as you, I feel like if you are the MongolZ going into this event with MOUZ and Spirit and Vitality not being there, and you are a team that is supposed to be in the conversation to be better than some of those teams, you have to win the event, no matter how well Furia is playing, no matter how good of a dark horse Furia is. Because in the end of the day, everyone loves Furia. Everyone thinks they're a phenomenal dark horse with a lot of firepower. I haven't seen a single person make the case that they are the best team in the world right now. A lot of people have made the case about the MongolZ.
Think about this. They just won this event over the Mongols, but where's all the people tweeting like, wow, Fury can win the major? No one thinks that.
Yeah.
They're still, even at the major, they'll be a dark horse. But I know what you mean. They are a very dangerous dark horse. No, here's the reason why if you're Mongols, that's all well and good, Ted, because you're trying to see it from their perspective. I don't have to. I'm not in their team. They are the #2 ranked team in the world by HLTV.org. If you go to a LAN where there's no #1, no #3, no #4, you're supposed to win that LAN. That is failure if you don't win that LAN. It just is.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same logic we're using for NAVI and StarLadder, so it would be a bit hypocritical not to use it here, wouldn't it? Because we're looking at NAVI saying they're the only top 10 team in StarLadder.
They only just got to this stage. Yeah. It's not like any player in the past was ever in big finals. Yeah, true. It's still new, but this is also why you get called a fluke, for example, if you do things and then you don't consistently do it. People expect you once you reach that level to then stay above that level or at that level. They don't expect you to dip down again. So if you can win, I mean, I don't think they actually could have won the major, but obviously did win EWC, and they've now every tournament are a threat to win the tournament. You got to close this one out. You got to win, especially like I say, because it's Furia. Like actually, there's a world where there's another reason why I think they would have won the final if they won map 1. If you start, the big thing about BO5s people miss is there's too much CS in it. So as a result, eventually it does become about mentality and psychological aspects, in my opinion. So that's why I do think it is enormous to win the first map of the BO5, regardless of if it's their map pick, because it just puts the other team psychologically so behind the 8-ball that I feel like that's where, if you are one of the teams like a Furia, like a Liquid, where it's fine to come second, if you get into like, you know, it's map 3 and you're down 2-0 or whatever, you just, that's why there's so many 3-0s in BO5, because it's like, fuck, we're done, boys, and we're mentally spent. Also, second was good. We played a great tournament. We're trying our best. Like, I think it's different. So that's the other thing, especially, by the way, that's the final thing to say. It also bummed me out that they did get to the last map and then they didn't get it done.
Yeah, I think you are expecting them to be a little bit more calculated, especially considering the fact that they've played back-to-back best-of-5 grand finals at this point.
If you're the favorite and you go to the 5th map, you'd think you should win, right?
Yeah, but then you're looking at the experience comparison, and that was the one thing that I was, I guess, thinking about once it got to a 5th map. I'm there standing, being like, well, MongolZ are supposed to be favorites, but then Fallen is on the other team, Kcerato's on the other team, Yuri's on the other team, Yukender is on the other team. Those guys have been playing professional Counter-Strike on this level for so much longer than all of those MongolZ guys. Who is actually the mental favorite going into this 5th map? Because I feel like if you're Furia, you just realize that this is your opportunity, because you were probably not even supposed to get there. But it is weird. It's a really good point that you're making about the best-of-5 grand finals going a little bit longer. This is the part of those games that MongolZ don't have experience with, right? Because they beat Aurora 3-0 and then they lost to Spirit 0-3. So for them, it's always been about the momentum. So now we see that if the game is a little bit closer and if it goes a little bit longer, maybe they just can't hold on. Maybe they just run out of energy, right? Maybe they run out of mental resilience, which is a worrying thing for them. But I guess the good thing is that they still get to play a couple events before the major starts, right? They're playing all the EPLs, all the Thunder picks. They're playing IM Chengdu, so there's going to be a lot of events to see if they can still be competitive. And I think Furia, do you really want to make something out of it other than the fact that they are an incredibly dangerous dark horse? Obviously, first tournament win for the organization since 2023.
Another problem they have, I mean, it's the first win ever, mate, in a real tournament. They've never won a trophy.
Okay.
So, like, this is ridiculous. Yeah, no, the problem is this is the best version of Furia ever.
Okay.
Like, because the problem is the other one wasn't the LAN one. It wasn't the one that won ECS, all those fucking million. No, they didn't win it. They made the final against FiSURE. It wasn't that one. It was the one where it was the online era and they had Henny. That's the one everyone like idealizes and remembers fondly because they had a functional AWPer. They have an even better AWPer now, mate. And the difference is, Kisrato never got worse. He stayed really good. And now magically Yuri's good again. That's why, if you notice, I don't fall into that whole Fallen trap, mate. Like, he calls a decent game, but first of all, if by that logic, he should be the best IGL in the world. He has a fucking awesome set of players. I call him to win the major, guys. My issue is this. They maybe looked a little bit better than they probably are at this tournament, because I'll tell you another factor that helped them in the final against MongolZ. Their permaban is and always has been ancient. That has always been one of the strong maps of the Mongols. So they actually had a very weird like angle that evened up the veto a little bit and made it so it could go 5 maps. So the issue is, against teams where that ancient doesn't matter, they're not going to be as good. I also do think as well that the Yakindar factor is, I don't know why people keep making it like he's back. Like, bro, do you not remember how good he was in like 2021? He was one of the best players in the whole world. Now he's just a functional player again. Like, he does his job. Here's the thing. He's a really good T-side impact player. I don't think he's one of the best players in the world. Like, I actually think, if anything, what he's done is go to a team where he doesn't have to be the star. You've got MongolZ, you've got Kisrato. Bro, he doesn't need to be. They've just made him work. That's more like, to me, where someone picks up a player that was failed as a star, but they use him in a different way. You know, maybe they're like a defensive midfielder or something instead of a scorer or some shit like that. Maybe this is the Ryan Gravenberch move or something. But I do think the issue is that FURIA is very specific on the opponent you play. They match up in some teams really well. Some teams they're just all right against. Like, if I had to guess, at the moment, HLTV has them ranked number 6 in the world. I think that's probably about right. They could maybe creep up to like a 5th, maybe. But I do think the issue is I don't think they go beyond that. I don't think they ever join the Spirit and the fucking... That tier stays above them, unfortunately. Which, by the way, if you look at where they came from, is totally fine. You'd accept that all day long. If you said to them, you'll have a functional team where all the players can work, and you'll have a chance, if you hit a hot streak and you get the right opponent, to win the odd event or make a big semi or something, that's enough, mate. We'll take that all day long. We can actually be a threat at the major. Yeah, that's legit. So I do think, I like, put it this way, they were my good point on the last Naked Banner. I just liked them as a team, or one of them anyway. Like, there's a team I enjoyed watching. Although I don't think the ceiling is actually like be number 1 in the world. I don't think you can do that.
No, I agree.
I also think the same thing, by the way, about G2. I think I have very similar thoughts. They're a different flavour of team, but I also think their job is to be a really strong dark horse. I don't think they're ever actually going to be like top 3 team consistently. And in their case, they don't even have the star power for it. So I think Furia's done everything they can, mate. I enjoy watching this team. What's not to like?
You know how I would describe FURIA and G2? I'd say it's much better to have a really exciting dark horse than to have an underwhelming title contender, if you get what I mean. So a team that is supposed to win all of those titles, but just can't do it. So that's why they're number 5th, 6th in the world. Against a team that is probably not supposed to win the titles. There's obvious differences between them and the teams that are contending for the, I guess, consecutive event titles most of the time. But they are really exciting, and you feel like they are playing the type of Counter-Strike that they should be. And as you said, on a good day, they could win an event, or they could go really deep into playoffs. I actually think this is good for Counter-Strike, and it's been a while since we've had teams like these that have been that exciting, at least for me. I feel like this is what FaZe has always been at big events, even when they haven't been the best, because they've always been able to compete for trophies. But again, those guys are a little bit different because they don't have the Karrigan and the Rain on the team. They have really experienced guys, but it's still a little bit different because they have some younger guys. They have some type of uncertainty around them, some new things that are exciting to watch. So yeah, I think putting FURIA and G2 in a similar category is actually fair. I do believe so. Although with G2, I'm leaving a bit of an asterisk because I think that Hunter as an in-game leader could probably level up his game even more as time goes in. And don't misunderstand me, I think he's already doing a really good job. But I feel like maybe G2 has a little bit of a higher ceiling for, let's say, in 1 year time or whatever. But we never know. Maybe MongolZ turns out to be the best AWPer in the world in 1 or 2 years. So that could raise the ceiling for FURIA. And the last one, anything to say about the Falcons?
I mean, the problem they have the whole time in their team is, notice on a lot of these other squads where I would say they don't have the firepower, I would always stress that what made them a good team was having a strong identity and people knowing their roles and fitting the identity of the team. That's where Falcons has a massive problem. The real reason they actually get flamed now by even analysts and famous people in the scene is nothing to do with the skill level of the players. They actually have some unbelievable players. The problem is, the reason I think people constantly harp on them is they do make some massive fundamental errors in the game, and some of that comes comes, in my opinion, from the fact that they are working with what doesn't even make sense as a squad. Like the point I made when they did the Keisuke move is, one, in a weird way, you have to sort of try a move like that because he's so good. It's like you figure it out after the fact where he's going to go and what his role is going to be and how you're going to make it work. He's just so good. You have to gamble on a player like that if they're available. That really is, by the way, like getting a Ronaldo when they're on the way up. You know they're cracked. Like if you don't get them, by the way, then in this case, Spirit's going to get them or some other squad's going to get them, and then they're going to get to use them against you. So you want to make it work. But the issue I have is this. When he joined, I said that if this actually works, this is why Zonic's entire reputation will be reclaimed. Because he'll have to have reinvented the T-side of Counter-Strike. Because I don't know how you get a team with Keisuke, Twistzz, and Nico and have them all be able to have functional T-side roles. Like, essentially, you're trying to make 3 players fit 2 roles, and you could even argue the 2 best of those, Keisuke and Nico, should probably both have the same role. So you have put yourself in a... If you are one of... Put it this way, this implies Zonic is not a role cell in any sense. This implies he doesn't even think roles exist, maybe even. Like, he really does have that logic of, like, you know, if you're good players, you'll make it work. Because the problem, I think, in this team is, I think they are the most hit and miss team I've ever seen in CS. They can't, now that Nico's got his shit together, they do have games where MongolZ, Keisuke, and Nico all fire at the same time. And if you watch that game, you will think, fuck, they could beat anyone. But then they will have games where 1 or 2 of them don't, and there is no structure to fall back on. There is no, like, beautiful chemistry where people play off each other. The Stratbook even seems fairly limited. Another thing about adding Keisuke, you've definitely added way more firepower, and he looks awesome. But I don't actually know at this point, does Kixon, what say does he have? How does he get to, like, decide stuff? Does he micromanage? Does he just let people go? I don't know. I feel like it's the other parts of it. It's not the players, except for the fact that this is also why, by the way, one move I will die on this hill forever. I'm not a Magisk fan in CS2. I think he's been trash in CS2. He was good in CSGO. He's been trash in CS2. But because I am a role cell, I would have kept him, not Twistzz. I think Twistzz is the better player, but again, I don't think the role exists. I think by the way, I think you have absolutely tanked his fucking game completely. I think he can play that well. And if I'm him, by the way, you should probably just be in Astralis or some other squad at this point in time. He's just a good player. So the real problem they have is, I think they have a fucking jigsaw where it's just different pieces from different jigsaws, mate. It doesn't even make a picture at the end. Like, I don't know what you come up with. So, like I say, I think it's a crazy gamble. And if you win, you probably win enormously. You look like a genius. I mean, if you want a football analogy, this is like, forget all like Pep Guardiola analogy. It's an old school one for you. This is like when Johan Cruyff made that Barcelona squad where, like, if people don't know, like, the fucking defenders could score like 20 goals a season because everyone was playing like mad attack in CS. Like, if people don't know, he essentially reinvented football, and no one's ever made a team like that since. So, if Sonic, put it this way, he's given himself the hardest challenge ever.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't
as
know how
well.
you make this work. I can't even flame it.
I was gonna make the reference with PSG when they entered football with the larger budgets as well, when they were just trying to sign all the stars until in a couple of years actually everything worked out. That's what it feels like. But I do agree with you. I think one of the main things that I was thinking about as well, because obviously Bit's name has been connected to this team quite a lot.
Sure.
Initially, I thought if you're making all of those changes, you either keep Magisk, or if you want to remove Magisk so badly, surely you remove both him and Twistzz and you bring in Bit to be a bit more of a supportive element, I guess, on some of the maps. And another thing, because you pointed out Kickson, the fact that they have got those 3 really aggressive rifles that, as you pointed out, you could argue 2 of them should be playing the same position, it doesn't change the fact, and I think it shouldn't change the fact that Kickson has always been a really active in-game leader as well. He's never been an IGL that isolates himself from the action, and I think he calls the best when he is involved and he's allowed to have a little bit of freedom and on both the T side and the CT side get some alright positions. So he's sacrificing a lot for the team, which I think for me is a little bit worrying in terms of, because I think Kickson is an excellent in-game leader, but I do wonder if he has to sacrifice so much and give so much freedom to everyone on the team simply because they are the players that require that to operate. Is he going to be the same IGO? Is he still going to be good enough if he needs to give essentially everything that he's used to working with for the team? And I hope he will be. I think it's a massive challenge. I agree with you what him and Zonic are going for. And in the end of the day, you could say that they still did win all of their games in a 2-0 fashion prior to that FURIA, one which they ended up losing in a really close fashion. One of the things that made me scratch my head in that FURIA game in particular, if we're talking about the context of just that one event, is the fact that MongolZ was completely outclassed by MongolZ, which is not something that I could say every day of the week and not every single time I say after an event. MongolZ was just not there. I think Train was alright. Nuke was probably one of the most underwhelming performances I've seen out of MongolZ on the Nuke map in a really long time. And I feel like that comes in as with a bit of an asterisk, as you pointed out. The fact that you have so many riflers on that team that require space doesn't only mean that it's going to be difficult for Zonic and for Kixon to have a way to implement them. I feel like it means that it's going to be a little bit more difficult for MongolZ to perform on a high level as well, don't you think?
I mean, I do also think this is why it's hard to build squads. Like, if you notice it, when I ever build squads on paper, I actually don't usually make super teams. I tend to make it where it's like you have 2 players who are the obvious stars. We're going to give all the resources to them, but the whole style, we're going to emphasize their strengths essentially. And then everyone else, is his job there is to fill the gaps or to like round out the identity of the team. That's the issue I think you have in this team, especially, by the way, another thing that's absolutely fucked you is you are suffering some success with Keisuke. He's playing too well.
Yeah.
So at this point in time, if he plays awesome and then Nico played shit for the first month or so he joined the team, well, then how can I like re-emphasize Nico in the squad? Like, he's the one fucking up at the moment, and he's the most uncuttable player in the fucking squad, isn't he? So I know what you mean. And then also MongolZ's in such a hard spot, mate, because he's like the fucking ultra version of Wonderful right now. Like, his bad games are the really big ones that get you eliminated. So everyone sees them and goes, oh, he's trash. But then all the other games, he's fucking carrying the fuck out of me. He's really good again. Like, people doing that whole thing, like he's a million miles from the top 3 player. He isn't actually. There's not that.
No.
If he got consistency, he'd be right in it again. He wouldn't win it, obviously, the way the year's gone. But he's had a bunch of games. He's another person who carries you through group stages, you know. I know what you mean, because Falcons here looked awesome right until the moment they didn't, and they looked shit.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's pretty much as you said, a hit or miss. They are the perfect
you feel the
definition
same
of it.
thing? If I'm Kixon, I feel like I got brought in on like false pretenses here. You know what I mean? It almost feels like you did just sign my core and you were always going to like fuck me over, because people forget Kixan and Shu here were in the same spot. If you go way back to that Blast Paris major, they were supposed to be the next IGLs that were going to replace the Carrigans of the world, and they were going to get that sort of status. Like, you control the team, you decide the way people play your system. It seems like the second he joined Falcons, they just gradually cut the guy's balls off, and now it feels like at the end, I don't even know what he calls. That's why I'm saying I don't feel like he's some, like, it's his system. I feel like it's Zonic's system, or it's based around the star players. I don't actually know. In fact, the saddest thing is, I feel like if Kixon ever gets replaced, did he even get a proper chance in fucking Falcons? I don't know.
I don't know either. I feel like and this is the last point I'm gonna make about that before we round it out. I have had the chance to speak to Kixon on multiple occasions in interviews. We did one when he was on Apex, and then one right before the Blast major in Austin. That was a really bad TED Talk curse, which I am quite apologetic for. I am sorry, but I have been left with the impression that he is an in-game leader that wants to have authority on his team, and that he wants to know that his word is final, and he's gonna listen to everybody else, but he wants to know that if he is the in-game leader essentially, and he will be held responsible, which he's got no issue with, he will be given the freedom in order to justify the fact that if things don't work out, he will know that it was his responsibility, right? But if you want to count someone responsible as a coach or an in-game leader, that means that if you want to point finger towards him, you've given him full freedom and you've given him your full trust beforehand, right? Because you can't hold him accountable if you weren't listening to them, right? It just makes no sense. And in that sense, I completely agree with you. I feel like if you're not giving Kixon the amount of, I guess, freedom of what you promised him at the start, and obviously we're just speculating here, maybe this is how he wants to play. Maybe this is the type of team that he wanted, and this is the system that he wanted. But if you're not giving him that, then you can't point fingers and say, well, they're not winning trophies. They've got some of the best players in the world. Kyusuke is an absolute slam dunk of a tier 1 player. If they're not winning, is the IGL's fault. We don't really know that, because we don't really know what he was promised, what type of a system they're playing, and if it was his idea or the idea of Zonic or somebody else. So yeah, I agree with you. Falcons is a weird one, but that actually leaves us in a place where Falcons are a little bit closer to being a dark horse than a title contender. The fact that they are hit or miss, and they will I guess disappear every now and then. They still are a title contender, but they're not the solid team that you're going to point and say, well, they're winning this event for sure. They can, but they can also lose that close game where something just doesn't click. So I think that leaves us in a really exciting state of the game where Falcons, FURIA, and G2 are just really close. And now that MongolZ have lost the grand final, it just feels like every single tier 1 tournament is a lot more open. And I feel like this is the final point that we can leave this conversation at. I'm not sure if you can identify which is the team that you're favoring for tier 1 tournaments from here on out. I would say that there's a really strong case to be made about, let's say, between 4 and 6 teams that they could win pretty much every single event.
I mean, the real problem is you've only got those couple of teams. Like the real issue right now is the two teams who could make World CS so much sexier if they literally just got 5% better is Aurora and Falcons.
Mm.
Because Falcons should be an event contender. Just thus far, they're like a dangerous dark horse because of the firepower, and they don't get to the final, they don't get over the line. And then you've got on the Aurora side, they can even make the final. They are just insane chokers in any final. Like there's something just going when the switch flips for them, they can lose any game. It's crazy. But the actual like raw ability, they're so dangerous. The knockout power is crazy. So the difference is when I look at those other teams, you look at MongolZ, G2, FURIA. These are teams which are like well balanced teams. They can win. They're mixing up. All these teams are in the same group for me. Like essentially right now in CS, I think this is the way it goes. You have Vitality and Spirit at the top. We don't even know what Spirit lineup yet because we haven't seen the new squad. But you have Vitality and Spirit at the top. Then you have like Mouse, MongolZ. Maybe you want to chuck like one of these teams in there. But after that, it's just dark horses. That's why I always tell people the top half of the top 10 is a little bit weaker than season one. It's less established. But the bottom half is way better, bro. Like you go to the bottom half in season one and it's like the whack NAVI and like FaZe is creeping in there. Oh, you've got some fucking dodgy ass team. MongolZ wasn't as good back then. Aurora used to lose every fucking semi and quarter. So the difference is now the dark horses are cooking. That's why actually, if the major started tomorrow, it'd be a mega hype playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think the circuit is really open. I hope this is how it stays for the major because that would contribute for a really interesting event. And you still have those really, I guess, weird teams right outside of the top 10, like a 3D Max or a Pain or even an Astralis. Maybe Stair can carry the hell out of them occasionally. That could be a little bit exciting. Then it's a little bit bleaker, but I agree with you. I feel like the top 10 at this current state of the game this year is the most interesting it has been since the start of 2025. But that's where we're going to close it out. It's been an eventful almost 2 hours. We're nailing it. 1 hour and 59 minutes right now. So thank you very much for joining me on this one. Something I didn't tell you, but this is actually going to be the first TED Talk to be uploaded on Spotify as well. So you're part of the debut. Yeah, anything you wanna plug,
That's
anything you wanna say?
All good.
Oh, good. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. Looking forward to the next one. Everyone, let us know what you think about the topics that we discussed, and let us know if you want us to roll it again in the future for after some other events or before some other events with Duncan. I'm sure you're loving those because it's pretty much my only job on those shows is to just give a topic and then you can go for 10 minutes. I can give my opinion in the end and go into another topic. So it's incredibly pleasant to have those conversations, obviously, on the road. But yeah, thank you for coming over. Thank you everyone for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.